Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first extend apologies for the delay in our start. We've had some technical issues, but we have worked them out hopefully so we can proceed. I would like if you can pay attention first to the safety briefing, which will come through our song system.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sundarlal Popo Bohora Theatre at the Southern Academy for the Performing Arts. We are making every effort to ensure your comfort and safety. Please take this time to listen to the following announcements. In the event of an emergency, an announcement will be made. You will proceed immediately but calmly to the exit closest to you. Patrons seated at the lower section of the auditorium will proceed to the center exits out of the building to muster at the furthest end of the eastern car park. Patrons seated at the upper section of the auditorium will proceed through the rear exits, down the main staircases, and through the front exits at the lobby to muster at the furthest end of the eastern car park. Eating, drinking, chewing of gum or candy is not allowed in the auditorium. Smoking is not allowed in the building. Photography or other unauthorized audio and video recordings are strictly prohibited. At this time, please turn off all cell phones and other electronic devices. Thank you and do enjoy the following performance.
I now will ask you to please stand for the playing of the national anthem, and I will invite you to sing along. Standing as I invite Her Grace Archbishop Barbara Berg of the IRO to give us a prayer.
Oh, Heavenly Father, this afternoon, we are children here, dear God, make an intercession unto you. We thank you, Lord, at this present hour, that we can put our hearts and our mind together, that we can say thank you, Jesus, that we have lived to see another day. We ask you, God, to bless the ministry of community development. Bless it. Bless it, dear Lord, and gender affairs. Lord, open up the minister's heart and mind. Bless her going out. Bless her coming in. Father God, here we are making intercession unto you. We are asking you for all the officers to bless the going out. Keep them, Lord, under the branches of your wings. Shelter us, O God, Trinidad and Tobago land. Lord, remember us. Send your angels, send your cherubim, send your seraphim, O God, to hover around our homes that we left behind. We call on you for guidance. We call on you, Lord, to bless our going out and our coming in, dear God. We say, our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and help us, Lord, to forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us, Lord, in the hour of temptation, but deliver us from all evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. We are lifting our eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh our help. Our help comes from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer our foot to be moved. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon the right hand. The sun shall not smite us by day, nor the moon by night. But the Lord shall preserve us. He shall preserve our going out and our coming in from this time forth and ever and ever. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
You may have your seats. Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not quite sure if he's here, but I will greet him prior to his arrival. But His Worship the Mayor Alderman Junior Regrello, Mayor of the City of San Fernando, Her Worship Archbishop Barbara Grayberg, Interreligious Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Angela Edwards, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, all chairmen, chief executive officers, and heads of national cultural agencies, our Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ms. Susan Shillan, our Director of Culture, Mr. Tejram Logan, Dr. Donna Knights, Policy Coordinator of the Policy Unit and the driver of this conversation this afternoon. We have with us also Mr. Damian Richardson, the Cultural Officer 3, and you will be introduced to Mr. Marlon DeBeek, who is the Cultural Officer 2 of the Culture Division and the facilitator for today's conversation. Members of staff of the ministry, specially invited guests, and of course the viewers and participants on our live stream via Facebook and the Culture.com TV YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the first of 5 conversations on the national policy on culture and the arts, creating pathways for cultural confidence. My name is Rodel Philip Simmons, and I will be your chair for today's conversation. A conversation suggests that communication is two-way, and even if there isn't agreement, there's awareness and acknowledgement of what I am sure will be many points of view, many opinions, and most importantly, many, many recommendations. As you can see, there is, and there will not be, any panel of experts sitting on the stage. Instead, we are looking to you as the experts, the practitioners, the academia, the artisans, artists, etc., who we have invited to join us today and who we will engage over the next month or so. We started the conversation on one level with a small team within the ministry, continuing on the work of many before. This is not about reinventing the wheel, but more about fixing the clogs and ensuring the vehicle moves forward smoothly, even if it has to reverse a bit at times. That being said, many of you have been part of a consultation on a policy for culture and the arts in the past, and we understand and recognize that you may ask, what is different? Well, you will be the one to tell us what the conversation, in this conversation, your views, your experiences, training, and expertise will determine how we move forward and the success. We are not starting from scratch. The consultations and drafts of the past 30-odd years have all been utilized in drafting the document that has been available to you. And at the ministry, we have agreed that at this stage in the development of the policy, we need to go back to you, the practitioners. The objectives of this session is very clear: to provide stakeholders with an opportunity to understand the spirit and intent of the policy framework, to obtain and document the feedback, comments, concerns regarding the draft policy, and to obtain support from the sector towards the goal of a finalized policy framework. What we have before us today, therefore, is a policy framework which we hope recognizes Trinidad and Tobago's diverse cultural landscape as a national asset and resource. There are several key concepts, focal points, guiding principles, and goals laid out in this draft policy framework, with the start of an implementation plan that, with your input and active involvement, will be brought to life in the not-too-distant future. Today is about discussing, talking, seeking clarification, guidance, views, exchanging ideas, respecting opinion, and challenging the norm. This document does not and cannot provide all the answers. In fact, it may even raise many questions. But that is our goal, getting input in whatever form. The conversation will be guided and not constrained, and will allow you, our partners in this process, to ensure the road to final policy implementation is paved with the right inputs of experience, expertise, relevance, foresight, and innovation. That being said, I want to move straight into today's program, and I would like to invite Mr. Damian Richardson, who is going to be the Cultural Officer too, who will bring remarks on behalf of the Culture Policy. Please welcome Mr. Damian Richardson to the lectern.
Greetings to one and all, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here to SAPA for this important occasion. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Junior Riguello, Mayor of San Fernando. I'd also like to acknowledge the Permanent Secretary and our Deputy Permanent Secretary in the ministry. I'd also like to recognize Dr. Karen Niles, formerly of the Planning and Development, Economic Development Advisory Board, and currently at the University of the West Indies. I'd like to recognize Dr. Susan Burke, University of the West Indies as well. I'd also, again, like to welcome all the artists, all the practitioners who are here with us today. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to you, and thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to attend today's program on the development of a national cultural policy for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We are here today to present to you the draft cultural policy framework document so that you will be given the opportunity to present your views and your comments. This is important because in a diverse society such as ours, our policy on culture must reflect that diversity. In addition, with the importance being given to the cultural sector as having the potential to not only preserve our heritage and develop our people, but also contribute meaningfully to the economy, a comprehensive policy guiding the way forward is critical. The journey to get to this point has been a very long one, spanning years. I therefore encourage you to actively participate in the discussions today so that we can get one step closer to having a national cultural policy. On that note, I would like to recognize the contributions of the Honorable Minister in bringing us to this point. It is only through her leadership that the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts could have produced not one but two draft policy documents, one of which we are here to present to you today. Let us therefore make every effort to ensure that today is productive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damien. On your program, we have the next speaker, supposed to be our Honorable Minister. However, shortly before the expected start of the program, we were advised that she is unable to be with us this afternoon. She does send her regrets, and she has committed to attending one of the other sessions. You would have heard me say we have 4 other sessions, 3 of which are thematic sessions, where she will be delivering her remarks. Definitely. So at this point in time, I would like to invite Dr. Donna Knights, who is the Policy Coordinator for the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, who will walk us through our PowerPoint presentation. Please welcome Dr. Knights to the lectern.
Thank you, Rodel, and a pleasant good afternoon to all of us here today. Can't see faces very clearly, but let me recognize, of course, His Worship, the Mayor, Alderman Junior Regrello, Mayor of the City of San Fernando, His Grace Barbara Burke, of the Interreligious Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Angela Edwards, our Deputy Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Suzanne Sherlin, all the chairmen and CEOs of the various boards and committees, our staff of the Carrie Fester Secretariat, and Ms. Lynelle Clark, and the ministerial team. I wish also to recognize my colleagues in the Culture Division, Mr. Ram Logan, Mr. Richardson, Mr. DeBeek, and all the other staff who have been assisting us. I wish to also recognize among us persons who participated in this process of policy formulation. Many of the names are at the back of the policy document. I see Ms. Sharon Bradshaw in the audience, who worked with us for a period of time and was very instrumental in the writing. I see Dr. Niles is here, and Dr. Burke as well, and all of the members of the Economic Development Advisory Board's Information Sharing and Collaboration Committee, who would have reviewed, critiqued. I wish also to recognize all my colleagues in the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, and in particular the policy unit of the ministry. And of course, all you specially invited guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Creating pathways to cultural confidence. We call this version 8, taking into consideration all the attempts since 1981 to finalize a culture policy for Trinidad and Tobago. We have pitched this as a policy framework, and we've pitched it at the root, what is considered the root of the challenges facing the sector, and I dare say the nation, the whole issue of cultural confidence, intending this policy to be a transformative document for us as a nation. I come to you this afternoon as the person who facilitated the work on this version, but who, and with none of the knowledge, expertise, experience, or possibly even passion that you, as members of the culture sector and culture and arts sector, would bring to the table. My training is in social work and sustainable development with a passion for community development and poverty reduction. But in the public sector, you get these wonderful opportunities. And so the strength of this opportunity is that our desire is to facilitate a process, and we facilitated a process that seeks to do our best for the sector and the nation and the future generations. I want to point out that we've been calling this a policy framework, and you would hear a little more of that later on. So let me just get situated. Right. So I'm going to take you through this process today, and I'm going to try to speed it up a bit. We will go through the policy process and the background. We would cover the justification for the culture policy framework, the key concepts, the sub-policy areas, the institutional principles and arrangements, and the pathways to development. And that is where we would go. In terms of the policy process, we have, in regard to the extensive work that had been done on the policy and several policies over the years, we decided to very quietly establish an internal committee and do the reviews of all the various policies that went before, but also in terms of local, regional, and international policy trends, and a lot of excellent expert documents provided by our local culture experts and academics. And we were able to present various versions that led us to today to our executive. We then decided to take it outside and go to the Information Sharing and Collaboration Committee of the Economic Development Advisory Board. That committee comprises about 25 public sector culture organizations and institutions, and we thought that that would provide an excellent place to get well-rounded critique from the sector. We also included some cultural practitioners as well. And through that process, we benefited from the voluntary service of several experts who gave their time over about a year to take us through the process of the cultural mapping exercises, and we came up with the vision and strategy that is before you. So let me take us through very quickly some of the policy positions that guided the framework as it is today, starting, of course, with our Constitution, which, of course, guarantees fundamental rights, freedoms and especially the freedom of expression, etc. The ministry would have already, the country would have also committed to about 19 different institutional conventions and so on, which we would have also taken note of, not the least of which would be issues of economic and social cultural rights and promotion of diversity of cultural expression and the protection of our heritage. We also took note in the Vision 2030 document, which seeks to recognize culture as an invaluable asset and a tool for shaping for community building, for development of cultural industries, and also as a tool for shaping productive values, attitudes, and behaviors. References made in the National Policy Framework about incentive for cultural industries, for artist capacity building, proliferation of the arts, and the correct institutional arrangements. All of these taken into account as we considered the shape of the policy framework before us today. We looked at the positives in the culture sector, a very vibrant and dynamic sector, an evolving sector, a sector with international presence and recognition. We see new and emerging entities and opportunities for artistic expression in the Big Black Box and Alice Yard. We have a diverse set of actors and activities at various levels of development. We have excellent work on drafts. In terms of the heritage, we have a local content policy draft that is also before us. And we have an excellent array of public sector entities that do good work for the sector. We took note also, however, that there is this absence of an approved policy, and so if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And so there's no overall agreement as to the strategies to get us where we would want to go. We notice that the sector is diverse and disharmonious. We recognize that there are still lingering effects of our colonial legacy that affects us in terms of the social sphere. We still have social cleavages. We still have marginalization and fragmentation within. In the economic sphere, we still have inequality, dependence on finishing touch industries. In the cultural sphere, we are still undervaluing indigenous knowledge. There's still unfulfilled potential of the cultural sector to contribute to sustainable livelihoods and a pervasive sense of need to have our cultures validated. In the institutional realm, we still have challenges of governance, of public sector, quasi-public sector, cultural institutions with implications for efficient usage of resources, accountability, and role definition. We have issues in terms of allocations and managing the financial resources and how we spend our money. Gone are the days when money is no problem, and so we need to ensure that we get value for money in all that we do. So that brought us to where do we want to go? And we considered, in looking at the breadth of issues facing the sector, both positive and negative, looking at the tremendous national potential of a well-oiled cultural and arts sector, looking at the history of the challenges facing the sector, we felt that there was critical need for dialogue to get it right. And we felt that a policy framework approach allowed that. Because it allows us to define broad goals, which we've done, and an overarching framework for the sector, as well as define some goals for subsectors that we would then elaborate on with your help. So in both areas, in terms of the broad goals, we want your intervention, and we'll come to that in a little bit. But also in terms of the sub-policy areas, we also would want to engage with you in more specifically itemizing what visual and performing arts should look like, what heritage, memory, and legacy should look like, and what our cultural industries look like. And so we felt that the culture policy framework approach allows us to map this overall vision and then give detailed treatment to each subsector as part of a whole. It will allow us the opportunity for dialogue and discovery without being prescriptive. And it allows us, as we have started today, greater opportunity for consultation with you, the stakeholders, for buy-in and the like. So what is culture? It's defined and has been defined in successive policies as the ways of life, and of course, with the assistance of UNESCO, ways of life, and structures of being. And that speaks to our symbols, or language, or values, or beliefs, or guiding statements, or norms. It speaks to everything from our clothing to our cuisine, our survival strategies, our work ethic, etc., social values, family structures, and our multiple identities. And then, of course, there's the issue of our cultural expression, which deals with our performing, literary, visual, and media arts. And the issue of cultural confidence sits at the center of this policy document. And I know that that would be no stranger to any of you sitting in this room, because this has also been featured in other frameworks. And cultural confidence is defined as a feeling of self-assurance arising from one's own ability to understand, to appreciate, and value one's own culture in such a way that allows the equal and open interaction with persons from other cultures and belief systems. So it is that ingredient that causes us to reach for the highest essence of ourselves. It is that ingredient that liberates us from viewing any of our cultural practices as inferior. It impacts our national pride, our inter- and intra-group relations, how we govern ourselves and our institutions, the absence of risk-taking behavior. It is fundamental, and it fundamentally affects the Trinbagonian persona and behavior. So we have a model of the cultural ecology of Trinidad and Tobago that situates at the very core the issue of cultural confidence. And it's designed in this concentric model framework to indicate the interactions among the various elements of our cultural sector. It also has a bidirectional arrow showing that interrelationship between all the aspects of the visual arts, heritage and memory, and wider cultural industry. And so it shows a very dynamic, interacting nature and the need for greater harmony and coordination. Let's move now to the policy statement, vision, and mission. And so the policy seeks to provide a framework for nurturing, for supporting, and maximizing the tremendous value inherent in Trinidad and Tobago's visual and performing arts, heritage, memory, and legacy, cultural industries, all in a manner that ensures growth and development of the artists and artistes, the cultural ecosystem, and ultimately the country. The vision, therefore, is the arts and cultural sector at the center of national development. In other words, making an optimum contribution, providing lucrative careers of choice for our artists, and a sector that is sought after internationally. The mission is to widen and deepen participation in Trinidad and Tobago's culture through the development, preservation, promotion of our culture and arts, our festivals, our heritage, and our assets. And by deepening participation, we are speaking about innovation, the fullness of our diversity, removing barriers and obstacles, audience development, demand for all that is we, facilitating the development of successful careers, and facilitating that global presence. The goals of the policy framework. Again, cultural confidence at the center. and deepening participation, critical to transforming our social and economic development. We want to strengthen our national identities and the sense of belonging and cultural citizenship among and between all social groups. We understand that the Trinidad and the Trinbagonian identity is a mosaic of cultures and ethnic identities baked into each other. So we are a people of multiple identities, yet a Trinbagonian identity. We want to secure and strengthen the infrastructure for cultural diversity, participation, exchange, and cultural expression. We want to support artists, entrepreneurs, and industry associations in the production of high-quality cultural outputs. We want to establish and sustain an integrated institutional framework to support the cultural sector. The correct institutional framework, we believe, is critical to our cultural confidence. We've identified 3 sub-policy areas, which you again would know very well. The visual and performing arts, which includes, not limited to by any means, media and literary arts, but also music, dance, drama, fine art, photography, craft, among others. And the policy would have a lot of detail on these sub-policy areas with a very detailed situation analysis that you would want, we would hope that you would have been able to have a look at. The heritage and memory, we focus, of course, on our cultural heritage, including our tangible built heritage, fabricated objects, underwater culture, sites, artifacts, machinery, etc., and our intangible, the oral traditions, our expressions, our rituals, and our festivals. And of course, our cultural industries, where we focus on monetizing our cultural products, and significant areas in Trinidad and Tobago being film, music, literature, broadcast, and media, broadcast media. So let's take us now to the implementation framework, the principles and objectives in our implementation recommendations. So we want a harmonized cultural sector. We want to deepen participation, and I talked about what that means already. We want to promote innovation. We want our cultural products to make money and generate sustainable livelihoods for our artists. We want to engage the best expertise within our creative ecosystem, and that's essentially you who are here with us today. We want to pursue genuine partnerships between government and cultural workers. And this is the continuation of that as well. And we want to utilize a collaborative process in the implementation and strengthening of what we have as our cultural ecosystem. So we propose a structure that looks like this, with the ministry playing a central coordination role, the Cultural Collaboration Forum playing a harmonizing role, and we'll tell you more about those in a little bit, panel of cultural experts playing a curatorial role, and the entire exercise supported by auditing and monitoring and evaluation, so that we can be accountable, but we can also learn from our efforts. Let's take each in its turn. The Ministry of Community Development will continue its role in policy making and oversight to the sector. working in close collaboration with other ministries, of course, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Planning, Tourism, Sport, Legal Affairs, etc. So cross-sectoral coordination within the public sector agencies for culture. It will have overall responsibility for facilitating a healthy cultural ecosystem with all of the partners in tow. And then it would give oversight to 3 specialist cabinet-appointed technical working groups. I was asked a question about a task force earlier. We would need to build out the directional plans for visual and performing arts, for heritage and memory, for the cultural industries, and the ministry would have oversight over that. And then we would seek to finance some of what we want to do through technical cooperation agreements, and the ministry would also facilitate that. We have learned a lot from the EDAB's Information Sharing and Collaboration Committee. We have seen the value of that committee. That committee was instrumental in finalizing the draft local content policy, and it was an opportunity to share what the various players in the sector would have been involved in. Now, I want to give you an idea of some of the agencies that were involved in that committee. You had agencies like the Carnival Institute, CNMG, COSTAT, of course, the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, Streets Culture Division, the Exim Bank, Export TT, Fashion TT, Film TT, GISL, Information Division, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Trade, Music TT, the National Training Agency, the National Trust, the International Intellectual Property Office, UTT, UWI, YTEP, the TDC, etc. So it's a wide breadth of institutions that play key roles in our cultural ecosystem. We feel that a structure like that would continue to be useful to the cultural sector in terms of that sharing of information across agencies. And I think all the public sector representatives today would know the constant desire and the need for inter-agency collaboration, and the issues of duplication or wastage, overlapping activities that take place when we don't talk to each other. And in this case, we're also thinking about the artists who may have to go from several places to get one bit of information because we don't have that general knowledge across agencies. And so we want to create an environment where the artist is well supported and opportunities for artist development are made available through the sharing of information. That committee, which we now call the Cultural Collaboration Forum, will also play a role in terms of the formulating of those 3 sub-policy areas which I spoke about just now. And it will also play a role in the development and recommendation of the shape of what we call the panel of cultural experts and practitioners. So let's talk about the panel of cultural experts and practitioners. Every cultural policy before this one has recognized the need for an arrangement that is involved in high-level curatorial work, looking at our arts and making recommendations for grant funding for development. And we want to ensure that the sector benefits from something like that again. So this entity is considered to be the engine or transformative arm of this institutional framework. It's considered to be the catalyst for innovation, dynamism, and growth in the sector, and a great source of support, it is proposed, for what we call the established and emerging artist. So it will peer review requests for financial and technical support submitted by cultural enterprises, entrepreneurs, and practitioners. It will also implement an awards program where we can celebrate cultural excellence and promote the development of excellence. Some ideas include a film award, animation award, public art, mobile apps, design and innovation, etc. And this is not new either. It has been recommended before. So let's just look a little briefly as we come to a close in terms of the pathways to development. So what we've done is that we have drafted the vision, the goals, and the main recommendations for each of the 3 sub-policy areas. But of course, we depend on your wisdom to move that forward, to your comments on what these should look like, and then your comments on the specific directional plans that would emanate from these 3 areas. So under VAPA, the visual and performing arts, including literary arts and media arts, etc., the vision is for a Republic of Trinidad and Tobago characterized by high levels of cultural confidence, with a people who recognize the visual and performing arts and the festivals that spawn them as key to the social and economic well-being and vitality of the nation. So the goals for this sector: develop a nurturing and environment and ecosystem. And I know that you would know there's a lot out there already. So really what we're saying is, how do we strengthen? How do we strengthen? We have the best village. We have a lot of activities at the culture division, music, schools and communities, cultural camps, etc. But we want to be a nation where we can always, and excellent work being done through the Ministry of Education as well, but we want to be always able to spot and nurture the budding talent in Trinidad and Tobago. We want to improve audience development and regional and global market penetration. We want to support a culture of excellence. We want to drive developmental partnerships and collaborations. So the collaboration between Nyala and Keys, or Kes, we want more of that. And our recommendations to incentivize innovation in the arts and festival development, use technology as a platform for developing the capacity for research and documentation. We want to promote training in marketing, financial management, and grant writing so that our artists and our art agencies can make the best of grant opportunities. We will have to continue public funding of selected cultural programs and strengthen the capacity of CSO for collection of cultural statistics. And these are just some of the recommendations under VAPA. There are many more in the document. Under heritage, memory, and legacy, we want an environment that facilitates appreciation for our tangible and intangible heritage, our built environment, natural environment, our products, our artifacts, and our sense of identity as Trinbagonians. And this, of course, will seek to build on the excellent work of the National Trust, the National Archives, the National Museum and Arts Gallery, and the Heritage Library at Nallis. The goals to create policies and structures to collect, preserve, and maintain treasures of knowledge, heritage, and culture, built and natural environment, and artifacts. To engender respect, appreciation, and a sense of value for our tangible and intangible heritage. To educate our citizens at school and at home towards a sense of national identity and pride in our heritage. To safeguard our traditional knowledge. And our main recommendations, and there are many others in the document, to foster and promote activities geared at the protection and development of national heritage, to provide an incentive regime specifically geared towards the preservation of heritage. We don't want to lose more buildings like Greyfriars and others. Promote awareness of important events in our nation's history, and encourage broader coverage of folk material, including national and regional media. And as I said before, we're working towards this in the draft local content policy. In terms of cultural industries, the vision is to cultural industries as a major vehicle for national development and diversification, and a central pillar of our national economy. So we really want to support creative idea development. We want to facilitate enhanced product and service development, and facilitate audience development, marketing, and distribution. Those are our goals. And our main recommendations, we want to support the development and mainstreaming of standards. We want to support enhanced collection, collation, and dissemination of cultural statistics. We want to create institutional architecture for coordination and collaboration. We want to invest in increasing access of cultural practitioners to new technologies and digital infrastructure. We want the IP laws to be enforced, and we want to support domestic and export market penetration. We did develop some cross-cutting goals, and they include developing standards related to the cultural goods and services. And standards are linked to marketing, to copyright, and all of those issues. We want to integrate technology into all aspects of production, distribution of cultural goods and services. We want to strengthen the institutions operating in the cultural ecology in the areas of research and development, governance, monitoring and evaluation, and financial and strategic management. We want to strengthen the communication and networking between artists and the organizations with a mandate for culture. We want to encourage ongoing intercultural dialogue, perhaps led by independent organizations that address Trinidad and Tobago's ethnic, religious, cultural, and economic diversity. We will support these efforts by a robust monitoring and evaluation system. The Ministry of Community Development will work via its culture division, its planning and implementation, its research and audit units. We will also work closely with the National Transformation Unit in terms of the national efforts at monitoring and evaluation. And then, of course, our Cultural Collaboration Forum will also play a role in the monitoring and evaluating of the activities in this regard. Where do we go from here? With your input, we would be able to revise the framework to include all the feedback and the rich discussion that we would have shortly. We would go back to Cabinet and seek approval for the task force or the teams that will build out the directional plans for the 3 sub-policies. We will come back to you and consult on those directional plans only, assuming that by the time we leave here, we'd have agreement for the broad framework. And this is one of the benefits of using the framework approach. We get the framework approved, and then we continue to work on the specific directional plans. We seek Cabinet's approval again, and then the cycle of implementation and revision will take place. So in closing, this is what we believe is necessary at this time to harness the dynamic sector and to move us towards a transformational cultural sector. It is also a display of our government's commitment to engaging with the sector in an intimate way. It is also to result in an harmonized sector managed with excellence and equity in a manner that builds our cultural confidence, strengthens our national identity, enables the best cultural talent representative of our diversity, and facilitates the most optimum contribution to the artist's livelihood and the national economy. I thank you, and I invite I will turn over at this time, I imagine, back to the chair, and we welcome really your views, your comments, and your feedback in terms of how we can strengthen this document and take it forward to realizing a national policy framework for culture and the arts in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Knights. I hope you were taking copious notes. We have a lot to discuss, but before we get to the discussion and the conversation, we have Mr. Idris Salim from the 2 Cents Movement, who's going to give us a kind of key concepts of the draft policy in a spoken word presentation. So I ask you to welcome Mr. Salim to the stage.
Afternoon. In listening to opening comments, and I was tasked with the opportunity to create something while this program is going on, which would be presented to you later on in the discussion and the conversation. But for now, I'll just present a piece that kind of reflects my art, which kind of validates why I would want to be part of this conversation. So I hope you enjoy. The lakes of hell would freeze over if Hades overheard he'd catch cows now that I am not one of his cash cows. Took some time on this ride as passenger on this passage of time. I patched it up fine. It wasn't a pass in, pass out. I am part rebel, part scout. I'm half-hearted, half-hacking my heart out. I've lived in the darkness casted by this dark cloud. I know for a fact now that gas burns, whether mark burns or mark timer. I know my time left is marked down. Have mercy on me. I am 31. To most, the poet is referred to as the flirty one. But don't be dumb, because in some circles I'm cursed, even rendered dismembered, so forget sex like Earl Theon, and by God's mercy and some Earl Ceylon we'd be able to unfurl eons and worlds beyond. I'm certainly honored to meet those, to me those are the worthy ones. Yes, I've failed to cast pearls beyond the reach of swine, and people's expectations on me are sometimes leaps unbound beyond any reach of mine. I'm beat sometimes. Once I begin to speak, I become weak, tongue-tied. All my issues I begin to sweep one side. Even with my poetic clout, I still can't get this message out. This mouth that translates any kind of page, that put me on the final stage for about 6 bouts. This mouth that runs, spit pistons, runs with the ones the big guns spit out. This mouth with a fixed thumb in, tongue sticks out, made a 6 spin from Crixton to one rich house. This mouth that would discount being rich if it means living without discounts. This mouth that is now being gripped by my tongue and a fist being ripped out. Why? Because there's pain that comes with this sun-kissed trumpet and drum kit type affliction. Goes beyond demons. Woe beyond to those who stay affixed on addiction. Only ones who know that way before the ink dried, I felt something inside. That internal rhyme posed in turn as concern of mine. The turbine churn coming back around again and again and again. And isn't that what rhyme is? Familiarity. Isn't that insanity? Doing the same thing over again and again and expecting difference. Waking every day living the same stanza. Telling these young men it'll be all right, it'll be all right, it'll be all right, but it never is. When the only way I know how to explain sounds the same. In the end, I want social change so bad I'll give up my homonyms and rhyme and line up every agent of change I could find. Hands bound to create the biggest man vine. If it's length we need to reach every young man's mind. Create a Pied Piper type of movement with my art. This my task from a present with my past. This might cast bright light upon shadows darker than any last night, right? My art could blast light, whether you aspire towards starting right or starting riot. My art is cast in dancing and marching, and arts in crafting, and track and javelin, and hands on and hands in, mass and masking, sins thin as skin, and Ameen and Amen and Ameen, arms in arms, to make a Muslim and Rasta turn Raslim. Ask him, no, ask me, how my art armed me with an army to fight my stereotypes, to raise the bar, to bar me one, but to never bar me. Thank you.
Thank you, Idris. I think he deserves another round of applause. That is art, part of our oral traditions. And I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's very, very instrumental that we're having this conversation at a time when we're actually at the finals of the Best Village, the Prime Minister's Best Village Trophy competition. We just finished about a week of the presentations, folk presentations. I don't know if you had an opportunity to go, but it's magnificent to see so many young people passionate about their craft and passionate about their art. And I think that we have a responsibility to protect what they are passionate about. And that's what we're about here today, about this conversation. So as we prepare to start talking, take out your notebooks, take out your writing pads, your pens, your points that you would have gathered during Dr. Knight's presentation, from your viewing of the policy online, from your experience, from your expertise. We now invite you to talk to us. Give us your views, ask us your questions, share your opinions. And to help guide that process, I would like to invite Mr. Marlon DeBeek, who is our Cultural Officer 2 at the Culture Division, who will take us through this phase of this conversation, this event. He will be discussing with you, raising the questions with you, directing questions to you, directing questions to persons who may have the answer, who may think they may have the answer, but who may raise more questions. So I would like you to please welcome Mr. Marlon DeBeek to the front. He is not going to be up here. He wants to be closer to you, so he will be down there so that you can direct to him. Please welcome Mr. Marlon DeBeek.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so let's just kind of stand for a second, yeah? Yeah, no breathing in and breathing out. You have dancers and stuff here, so brace yourself. I might get inspired and call a dancer to do a little routine and a singer to do something. You know, so just turn to the person left and right of you and say, my culture, my confidence. Let's repeat that, my culture, my confidence. And just give us another line of our culture, our future. So let's go. My culture, my confidence, our culture, our future. Again, my culture. Thank you very much. Take a deep breath in and out and have a seat. Right? Just a stretch and let the blood go. So it's really wonderful to see all of you here this evening. Thank you again, Dr. Knights, for this presentation, and all of those persons who have contributed to this particular document. What is important with policies and rolling out policies, even policy frameworks, is that policy needs to be very close to the people that it's meant for, right? And often with policies, sometimes with a cultural policy, what is the date they said? And since 1981, right? That's one of the reasons that probably might have been the policy was separated from the practitioner. So that is what this session is intended to correct. That you, the artist, you, the practitioner, you, the cultural worker, get to probe the policy and to ask questions, make comments, give suggestions, recommendations that bring the policy closer to you. Yes, artists and cultural workers would have contributed to the development of the policy over that long period of time, but it's important that let's look at the real time of the document. Let's look at what's happening today in this particular year for artists and cultural workers, right? We know that a lot of us work in different fields, whether it's music, dance, whether it's in the folk traditions or even in contemporary avant-garde work. We want to be able to bridge the gaps. We want to be able to identify where there are silos. You know, we like to work by ourselves. We don't like to collaborate with people, right? So how do we fix that? How do we provide avenues and platforms to remedy that? And that if inside this particular policy, that can be identified or is already identified. And if it's not, how do we fix that? What are you all going to say about that? All right? But one of the biggest things we want to kind of put on the agenda in terms of a question is, what does cultural confidence mean? Because that's the core of this particular policy. It's saying that if you have that cultural confidence, the policy and all the guidelines and frameworks in the sector are supposed to give you that sort of impetus, give you the confidence to do your work, make money from your work in some cases. In other cases, just really to express yourself and put that out there, because that's what? That's a representation of you. You know, as we said, my culture, my confidence. So we want to be able to have some discussions about that. Because we're working with a sort of 50-minute time frame, I want to have the whole Q&A session kind of operate in. We have some persons on the floor who are going to help in that, managing that session. We have 2 mics on either side, house left and house right, stage left, stage right. We're talking to theater people, so we know, right? And we have Jamie, we have Kimmy, and we also have Stacy, right? Who's going to help us in guiding the audience in terms of when you have your questions. Just raise your hand. I'm going to allow you in the first round 2 statements. These statements could be in the form of 2 questions. It could be a question and a comment, a question and a suggestion, 2 recommendations, okay? So we have, as I said, we have Jamie, we have Stacy, and we have Kimmy who's going to facilitate that. But putting out there again the idea of cultural confidence. And what does it mean to you? And does this policy reflect cultural confidence? And are you able to do the work that you need to do inside there? First question from the floor, please. Just raise your hand. Yes, one right here, please.
Do you need me to stand?
Yes, you can stand, please, so we can identify you. The cameras could pick you up. Just give us your name. If you're from an organization, share with us, please.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Rampersad Parasram.
Yes.
And I'm here as chairman of the Indian Diaspora Council of Trinidad and Tobago, which is a foundling non-governmental organization registered with the Ministry of Community Development. but it really comprises of a number of organizations. And I want to recognize very briefly, with your permission, Mr. Deek, the Vice President of the National Council of Indian Culture, who works with me in a number of projects. Right. Let me also take this opportunity, Donna Knights, for congratulating you, my old colleague. Actually, there are a couple of things. I know it's cliche, but I tend to look at life as an integrated, holistic developmental process. Right? So there is that. In terms of the PCEP, the panel of cultural experts, which would be vested with very, very important responsibilities. The way I heard it, awards, grants, technical support, and other things. And given the nature of our society, one of the issues in my mind would be, how would this group be selected? So I think that's important, particularly because at times there is a lack of confidence in people who serve on these bodies. The other thing is, I wanted to ask really, because I heard a presentation from the ministry, from the government, but it involves the community at large, and wondered what degree of autonomy there should be in driving culture. Should it be driven by government per se, or should it be driven by a committee made up of, or a commission made up of members of the community, which is standalone, autonomous, and properly funded? So those were two areas, but because I'm a psychiatrist and a retired chief medical officer, I'm also interested in the issue you raised about how does one build cultural confidence, given our colonial history, as correctly pointed out by Dr. Knights, and suspicion and doubts and misgivings which have plagued us for many, many years. So I think I will stop at that, and perhaps at another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've recorded the two questions, so I can move on to another question as well. Yes? Yes, Mr. Kidiaz.
Good afternoon. Keith Diaz, President of Anthem and Tobago. I just want to state, Keith Diaz, President of Anthem and Tobago. I want to bring greetings. On behalf of Anthem and Tobago, we welcome the national policy on the statement of culture. I, for one, have been advocating this on my show, on radio, because I feel strongly about this. And many of us in the PAN fraternity feel appreciated if this becomes a serious statement for the culture of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to ask one question. We need to establish a straightforward policy of the approach in terms of any kind of funding that is going to come to steel bands in our society, whereby, I know there's a policy, yes, but it is not so straightforward in the business of the government. We need to have a simpler policy that if any kind of economic approach towards the steel band movement, that the grassroots man could understand and move forward. I think you should look at this and revise the policy that you will have. That's the first question. The second one, we should consider a large museum. I saw places in the world, in France, in Australia, and many parts of countries, where they take all the cultural things, and somebody would pay to go and see it, and see art, all different types of art, all different types of our culture, and we should have a large building that we could go to, not a small corner or something like that. And the other thing I want to talk about is development. We have steel band, which is moving into international space, and I would like to know and tell people the economic value we get from the pan and the tuning aspect. I think government needs to have a different policy on that. So when people look, this is the national steel instrument. So when people look at our country, they will see we have a national policy. And this is why I stand here in support of this. Because it's very important for people to understand in a country like ours, there's no other country that developed this but us. So we need to find that pathway for that strengthening. So I will stop here at that point.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's kind of just go to the responses of those. Yeah, so hold your question. We're going to respond to those two questions, two sets of questions, and then we'll open back for questions again. The first question was how would the PSEP, right, group be selected, members, participants in that particular group be selected, right? Dr. Knights, sorry. Yeah. You can better use that one.
Okay, so can I say this?
That's what people may want to see, but it's fine.
And so just in terms of a way of management, I would also recommend that we engage conversations, not just in terms of a response from here and from the ministry, but I know that there are experts within the audience who can make some contributions as well to some of the discussion, right? So let's talk about the
what's the vision that that you all had in terms of that particular group? How was that intended to be created?
The PSEP would have been developed, or recommendations for the PSEP would have come out of the Cultural Collaboration Forum, which would be an entity that comprises all of these various entities in the sector. And so definitely that route in terms of recommendations, as well as other entities within the sector could make recommendations as well, or would be approached for recommendations as well. So it will definitely be on the basis of recommendations from within the sector to comprise the PSEP. And that's how we expect that it would be a pretty diverse and well-represented entity.
And so you're also saying that within, not only in this particular forum, but in the subsequent thematic sessions, the one for VAPA, the one for the heritage, memory, and legacy, and as well the one for cultural industries, when we dig deeper down into those particular parts of the policy, the persons who participate in that, you could actually make more concrete, clear recommendations as in who should be a part of that. And we're talking about organizations, representatives from organizations, and specific types of practitioners unique to those sections. Yeah? The second question, again, from the gentleman was about what is the role and why should government be leading the charge for culture? That is what you were saying, right? Yeah. Any response on that? Because I know in your presentation you spoke about government being facilitating the policy and the movement of the policy forward. Yes. Is that what you see?
Yes, the government would have a policy oversight role.
Right.
Okay. Not necessarily the only entity that would be, involved in. So the role of government in terms of its oversight, it just needs to be there. I think the issue would probably be, again, the role of the PSEP and what it looks like.
Right.
Or whether it's a government entity, whether it's a fully autonomous body, etc. And that also, there's opportunity for further development in terms of what that looks like.
Okay. All right, good. Let me just get the two statements. Well, Mr. Diaz, I know your two statements or questions are very specific. They're located somewhere inside this policy, and I think definitely you would have to attend the VAPA session that will speak about visual arts, music specifically, and even the cultural industries, all of them actually, because you spoke about the museum, which is, will reside within the area of heritage, legacy, and memory, and then the creative industries. So we expect to see you at those three sessions and really breaking that down for us. I think because your statements are very specific, and we would like to pay more attention to them in those particular sessions. Yes? Yeah. Thank you. Back to the floor. Yeah?
Hello.
And one.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. My name is Eugene Bass.
Okay, no problem.
Born and bred Forest Reserve. I represent the Faizabad Connection Drama Group under the artistic directorship of Mr. Zeno Constance Jr. On the question of cultural confidence. I think it is compulsory that the government draft legislation that we must have 50% local music on our radio stations across the board. Number one. Secondly, what is the community development and arts doing about some of the greatest musicians we have in Trinidad and Tobago have produced in terms of the history, and what are they doing of our sociological pathways and contributions, having come through colonialism, to independence, to republicanism. We still seem to be stuck in a colonial pathway where even our universities, people have to come from away. And do you know that some of our tertiary musicians are unable to read cut time music? We have invented steel band. Steel band and calypso is greater than ring on finger. And I am saying, and I keep saying, the ministry had a program called Community Schools. I have been doing the guitar chair for the past few years. Lo and behold, I was told by Mr. Clark, it stopped. From the inception, I asked, why not cut time is not seen as a priority? I was told, but Mr. Bass, we still have to do the basics. I said, what do you mean by the basics? Do we have to do next people music? Cut time music is different to 4/4. And if the steel band players are taught that, it's easier to read, because God in God's wisdom created the art of hearing. Anything you write, you have to hear it first. But I am saying, so, if we have to develop cultural confidence, we must have our experts, and I don't mean those with letters behind their names. People like the greatest guitar player ever lived, the late, great Mr. Fitzroy Coleman, one of my mentors, Mr. Trevor Woodley, Mr. Earl Rodney, Jason Batiste of Point 14. What are we doing? Many people, I do a class with students and I ask them, name me some of your great vocalists. They all call it all kind of American people name. And I said, you know the late Ras Shorty is one of the greatest singers I worked with? You know what they said? But sir, he's a Calypsonian. So I think our universities got to take a back step and start inculcating in our young musicians our history and the social development and our contribution to this world. One more thing. Sure. I have created a school called the University of the Barber Green. How that came about? I was in Alabama, and a white boy came and saw my guitar, and he took it up and he started playing. And when he was finished, I took his song, and I started to block it up with some chords. He said, man, where do you go to school? I said, the University of the Barber Green. He said, where is that? I said, in Trinidad and Tobago. Meaning, I'm a road musician. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sure.
Just now, I would like to thank the drummers, all the drummers who are here, every single one of them. And is the mayor here? Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for the stand you took for Carnival, and also let the police know that Carnival also give us cultural confidence.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bass. Ms. Regis.
Good afternoon. My qualifications behind my name, M-I-S-S, Miss. All right. So I just want to continue where Eugene said there. I want to go straight to drumming. I'm not a drummer, but I dance to the drums. The Community Development Ministry presents the Prime Minister's Best Village Trophy competition. When you go to a community center, there are people waiting to play drums without drums. So therefore, I think some grant funding could go into that for the making of traditional folk drums, whereby you can dance the traditional folk dances. And that never happens out of the 25 years that I'm teaching Best Village. So the drumming tutor normally carries their own drummers, and so that is how the villages enter. I just want to jump now to the PCP. Since I'm a very fair in deliberations, I would like to offer my name to be part of that forum. We're deciding the grants. And we're now down to, yes, I write down everything before it was even spoken about. Yeah, just that. From the Ministry of Community Development and Culture in the Arts, there must be a safe location for storage of costumes, instruments, and artifacts used during national representation. The following year, they tell you they don't know where the costumes are, so therefore, it's not there. So therefore, I cannot have cultural confidence if that is never looked at. Then, respectful reading of official communications by professional cultural administrators who will be unbiased in the process. I'm taking a short time. So, I do a spoken word. I do 1, 2 for dancers now. Cracked feet, broken feet, busted toes, back paining, costume valued at 1,000, 2,000, whatever money, in a darkened tent, a buzz with mosquitoes, malaria, dengue, Zika, chikungunya. The marsh grab must never need BOP, protect us, or Coxet again. That happened a year dance to the marsh grab. We ran from mosquitoes. And I have one thing to contribute again. And this is very important. Underutilization of the ministry's venues, presentation of excellence by groups and organizations in Trinidad and Tobago. As we support communities, groups and artists with their shows, events, activities, the partnership agreement should, and then I went on to say, better yet, must also incorporate appearances at Sapa, Napa, Naparima Bowl, as this will contribute to cultural followers who rush for the free tickets, with shows mainly brought down with foreign performers. 2 for 1 person. To see, and therefore, this will give our Trinidad and Tobago rushers to see new performing artists, know they exist, and appreciate and allow to access new audiences in the genuine partnership and strengthening. And that is how new budding artists in communities, some people don't even know they exist. Some people don't even know that groups that are in existence for 25 years exist. And in my final statement, contentious, yes, the Ministry of Community Development, Culture, and the Arts must be fair in their payment when they hire performers. Example, this gentleman here hired to perform on the same show with me. He had $1,000. I get hired on the same show, $2,000. This young lady get hired, $5,000. And this gentleman here get hired, $15,000. I know it happens. It happened to me. Because when the checks are shared, artists do collaborate and they show each other the checks. So therefore, that is part of my contribution into how would we really fix this. It is cultural confidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy. All right, I just want to pause on the questions for 2 seconds. I know I have to recognize this lady right here. 1. Yes. Just let me just get, after you, and then I will go Tambo, right? Felix, etc., right?
Good afternoon, Joanne Francis, Trinidad and Tobago Craft Entrepreneur Network. So I'm coming from a different angle.
Good.
Cultural confidence. How do we deal with craft in Trinidad and Tobago? community development. Many, many years ago, there was a National Craft and Craft Council. No longer exists. Years ago, the craftsman, around this time of the year when you had the Best Village coming to a close, there was a National Arts and Craft exhibition where you saw the best craft exhibited. No longer exists. Sad. Very sad. You cannot expect to have a country like this and you want to talk about cultural confidence and ignore craft. Because each and every one of us, when we go away, we always look for a souvenir. Who do you think created those things? It's a craftsman. We are neglected. We have started doing markets. There are markets in Trinidad. Even here, there's one at, they call it the South Market, right? And when we, the craftsmen, go out to these markets, which is probably once a month, maybe the person who saw our goods can't afford it at that point in time, and they want to know, well, where can I find you all? You see that? Where can I find you all? It is becoming a very, very sore point for crafters. I know there are crafters here, and I know they are very familiar with that question. It is about time that the government of Trinidad and Tobago designate a place for craft where people can come and buy craft Monday to Sunday. At any given time, you know there's a place. Not the souvenir shops. When you flip it, you see made in China. We are talking about local, handmade craft. That would help build cultural confidence, where Trinidadians know that these things are their own. So you see, we move forward, but we really take many steps backward, because we used to have buy local. How many of you all remember about that? You see? So moving forward, we're going backward. And another thing that will help build cultural confidence is, do we have a national wear? Do we have a national wear? Yes, we know it's red, white, and black. But do we have a national wear when we go out to represent Trinidad and Tobago? Marlon, we went Carifesta. Do we have a national wear? We were in all red and white and black all over the place. Stage, Mr. Ram Logan, you know what I'm talking about. But could you have seen a uniformed thing saying, hey, look, the Trinidadian and Tobagonians coming? No, just red. Red is a color. Do we have a national wear? When we wear it with pride and say, we are Trinbagonians. We need to look at that. That will help build cultural confidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
It goes to Tamba.
No, I'll do it in the next set of questions. So let us just take an opportunity to just kind of respond to those three sets of questions. But what I'm getting from those statements there is that sense of our need to be represented, to see ourselves more, to hear ourselves more. I think one of the biggest things that Mr. Bass mentioned was the 50% local content. And then what you're touching on here is the idea of buying more local, producing more local, and having access to more opportunities to present. But does the policy, as you see it right now, does it facilitate that? Anything in the policy have you identified, does it facilitate or does it prevent it? Right? Another question is, what is stopping you as a practitioner from doing that? From doing that, from presenting, from showcasing your craft? Right. I just want to go back to the statements of question. Just help me, Lucy, to clarify something. Well, thank you for nominating yourself for the PSAP. That's what people want, people to say, hey, I want to do that. Because that's part of, public service. You have to put yourself in place, right? You can't affect any sort of change if you don't show up, right? And you all showed up today to help affect that change, and you have to show up on the other days, right? Or else we won't hear your statements, we won't hear your recommendations. So thank you, Lucy, for volunteering. I think also in some of your statements, Lucy, you're talking about education. I think education is one of the big things you're trying to, not only from the formal system through secondary schools, primary school, but that sort of campaign, that information sharing about what we have culturally. And that in itself would build confidence. If you know it's there, and you know that's part of us, you can say, oh, well, I can identify with this and I can feel this too, So thank you for that contribution. Issues of funding and payment, that is a very deep issue. That is a long consultation by itself, and we're not presenting on a grants policy. We're presenting on a cultural policy framework. And within the thematic sessions, you will have the opportunity to contribute in terms of how do we deal with funding and who are the persons involved in assessing what grants and so on will get funds and so on. The issue of the 50% local content, well, we know that is one of the biggest discussions when it comes to building cultural confidence, but really pushing the sector forward. If the music industry is to get where it needs to go, you need to have more of it playing on the radio so that more citizens could say, well, that's mine, right? And you would purchase more local albums, you would be able to download it online from iTunes, etc. And that in itself will build the kind of sector to support locally. And of course, naturally, it would start going outside much easier. I know that the ministry and Dr. Knights could respond to this in terms of the local content policy and where we're at with that. Dr. Karen Niles was one of the contributors to the current policy framework. And in mind standing so the cameras could pick you up, please. Thank you, and the audience.
Good afternoon. Hi, so my name is Karen. I recognize quite a few of you, Your Worship. Good afternoon. So there are two bodies that I would represent here today. Well, actually three. One would be UE. Yeah, I'm one of those. I lecture at UE. But I also served as the chairperson for 2 years of the Information Sharing and Collaboration group. We called it that because I couldn't find a better name for it. That was the group of entities that across government began to meet. Any state agency that had anything to do with culture, if you are an agency owned by the state and you had a cultural desk, most likely you were on that committee. If you represent a state agency and you never heard of it, please come see me after. But Dr. Knights kind of listed the whole, a number of agencies, and that's not even all. So what we did very, very simply is to kind of harmonize our actions, because we realized that many of us were doing the same thing with very little money, so we just stopped doing many of the things that we were doing. So those meetings in and of themselves saved like thousands of dollars. I'm not even kidding. And just from us stopping doing the same things. And then the other thing was, we realized that people were being sent from office to office to office to office because we didn't even understand what was going on in other offices because of the silos. And so we were able to cut down on a lot of that as well because now we understood what other people were doing. And then the third reason, and the reason I think he gave me the mic, the third agency I represented was as a subgroup of that Information Sharing and Collaboration group, which will now be the Cultural Collaboration Forum, the CCF in the policy. A subgroup of that was a committee that was formed to look at the issue of local content. Because when all these state agencies gathered, every single one of them said, this is an issue that every single stakeholder that comes through the door says, we need something to do with local content. So we said, okay, let's draft something on local content. We met for over a year and put together, we met with some of the key state stakeholders and some of the key private sector stakeholders, including persons from represented the broadcasters, the radio, and the advertisers. We met with them as well. And we drafted a policy, a final local content policy, and I handed it to the Minister a couple of months ago, and she said that she really wanted, she said thanks, first of all, I should say that she was very, very grateful for the work that we did, but she really wants to get this policy passed first, and then after, she said we will push that. But the issue of quota, everything that you guys mentioned before is in there, and we can talk about it in more in depth, because there are there are significant things that need to happen before you can put a quota in place, because in order for it to work, you need to be able to detect every single song on the radio, which means that every single song needs to have a digital ID. Yeah, and that's something that in Trinidad and Tobago we don't have yet. So together with Music TT, we actually begin to build a digital music interface, because I don't know if CUT is here, but the method used by CUT is actually a sampling method. So you don't, if you're a musician or you have a song on the radio, you don't get paid every time your song is played. I find that's a problem. So they actually take a sample, a representative sample from the radio stations, and they pay you based on that sample, right? And after they take the administrative fee out, then you get your payment. So what we want to do is there are certain things that we need to put in place before we can actually implement it. So we need to pass this policy first, that was what the minister said, because she wants to deal with the overarching issue of cultural confidence first, and then once people agree that this is an issue, cultural confidence is an issue, then she wants to say, okay, let's actually pass the local content policy. So that's our plan. But in the meantime, we're not even waiting on that. We are beginning to build a digital music interface so that every single artist can go on to the internet, register their song, and have their own ID. And what that interface will do, and it's being developed by an organization called Music TT, what that would enable every artist to do is to go on the internet and monitor how many times their song has played for themselves. Because that software will monitor the radio stations for us, for the government. And then you, the artist, will be able to go and see how many times your song is played, and then go back to CUT and say, well, my song played 100 times, I only seen money here for 50. And that is the kind of thing that you need in order to, because if you're going to have a quota, how would you know if the quota was met or not met if you're not actually monitoring every single song? So that's one of the things that we want to look at. I see you, Mr. Bass.
Could we get a mic for the suggestion, please, so we can capture it clearly?
Oh, Dr. Burke is watching on the internet, by the way. You guys would have heard her mention before. But Dr. Susan Burke is actually watching from online.
Yes. As a practitioner, sir, I think we have too many artists in Trinidad and Tobago who will not like to be robbed. So I think we can be our own watchdogs as well.
Yes.
Because I have been in contact with Library of Congress, where I have a lot of literature. And there's a book by Moses Avalon which talks about Confession of a Record Producer, in which you detect those scams on the radio stations.
Exactly.
So I, as a former paramilitary trained person, I would like to take some detective work because I know how to deal with them.
No, but another thing you could do, Mr. Bass, I think if we had a musicians union, it would really help. So maybe you could start it. No, I mean serious. Like maybe you could really start it.
Very well, sir.
We need one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Niles. Thank you very much for your response. I just want to read two questions, present two questions. This is from Ms. Joyce Curtin of the Lesotho Dance Company, who's sitting up here. Please welcome her. One of our elders in dance and mastered choreographers. What is the ministry's policy as it relates to the provision of rehearsal spaces for groups, especially groups who have existed from 56 years like mine? And also, could you tell us what arrangements are being made for Carifesta 2019? You know that Trinidad and Tobago is hosting the Carifesta next year? Some of you all know that, right? Most of you all know that, right? Good, excited, I hope. All right, but let's not make this talk about Carifesta yet, please, okay? You know where that could go, which is supposed to be, of course, hosted in Trinidad and Tobago. So the first question in terms of rehearsal spaces, the ministry does not have any sort of direct hand in that. What the ministry has 4 major public spaces. You're in one currently, SAPA, the National Academy for the Performing Arts, the Lord Kitchener Auditorium, Naprima Bowl, sorry, and Queen's Hall. But those are operated through a board or management committee. And you, the general public, have all the right to call and book a space and rent them. Outside of that, we have the community spaces, the community centers. And I believe that's an opportunity for some access for rehearsals, etc. I don't know if the deputy, yes, the Deputy Director of Community Development could give a response on that, please. Yes, so we can just get a mic right here too.
Good afternoon, everyone. But before I answer that other question, I want to answer the question that Joanne mentioned. Concerning the handicraft, the ministry last year, we did hold a symposium at Hilton trying to address some of the issues that we know the handicraft fraternity faces. And coming out of that symposium, we have been hosting handicraft fairs at Napa. So far, even and the difficulty sometimes is like there are so many private run artisan markets that we were trying to host one for December, and the ministry couldn't host one because I think there were about 20 throughout Trinidad private market that persons attend. We have just completed one at Napa this weekend. We are having next week at Napa as well. We're having a jewelry explosion in August the 10th at Napa, and we're hosting one at Sapa at the end of August. From I think the 24th to the 26th of August, we'll be hosting at Sapa. And we're trying to see definitely throughout the year to host different artisan markets so persons would have the available space to sell their goods. The ticklish question is the use of facilities it's an ongoing issue that we have. We are hoping that one of the things that we're looking at is that something will be addressed in the community development policy. The ministry, the division, community development division as well, we are hoping to put a committee in place to address the use of the facilities, because at present, I'm trying to find the most politically correct way of saying it that would not create Right now the ministry is somewhat in a little contentious issue with ownership of facilities, and I think once we address that, I definitely everything else will kind of fall in place. So I think that is the most politically correct way of answering the question right now. If I delve more, it might create other issues.
Okay. All right. I think some of these questions are very nuanced questions. Some of them are very specific to disciplines and practicing your discipline and so on. So we have opportunities to those questions and to really probe those in those thematic sessions. I want to move back to the series of questions, starting with Rubadiri, going to Tamba, going to the lady right here, going to you, and then I have to do this in the next rounds. Yeah? Okay.
I think it was Tamba, yes, then me.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Tamba. It's okay. I got the wrong order. Sorry. Tamba, Rubadiri, the lady here, and the gentleman here. Thank you. Just kind of keep them concise.
Good evening, everyone. For a long while, I've been hearing people discuss culture in Trinidad and Tobago, and including myself. And I think we're not facing up to one significant reality, that daily we are being imposed. Foreign culture is being imposed on us via the media. So how then are we going to develop cultural confidence if we have not, for some reason, been able to challenge that cultural interference enough? Because the young people who we're trying to address or to pull in to this cultural circle that we all are part of, what is the cultural circle that is influencing their thinking today? And how are we going to move that cultural circle replace that cultural space that they're caught up in with the cultural space we here discussing today. And I don't hear that being addressed at all, even at a higher level than here, meaning higher in the sense of administration. And it's blatant to see that all the issues that involve crime and all the social issues, ills, are directly being influenced by a outside and negatively influential culture. And we'll come and sit and talk about what we could do to develop cultural confidence here in the midst of that whole bombardment from that foreign invasion. So how are we addressing that?
Local content. Local content, I think, is one of the biggest ways of addressing that, radio and otherwise.
But this is more than local content.
It's one way.
But I understand what you're saying. Yeah. But at the level of how we were addressing local content, it's even bigger than that. Because it's culture from the point of way of life.
Yes.
And not culture from the point of just the arts.
Yep. Thank you.
Right? And I am thinking that culture, meaning way of life, influence what the arts would represent. So what these young people out there would identify with culturally would be from the major cultural influence that they are exposed to, which would not be what we discuss in here. So that's my
Thank you.
question.
Thank you. Rubadiri, yes.
Hi, Rubadiri Victor, Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago. All right, a couple quick notes. I find that the document doesn't read like a cultural policy document. It reads as a strategic plan to rehab the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts. It doesn't conform to a lot of the basic things about a cultural policy document, how it's supposed to be. I think that's a broad thing. I find it a little too alien and academic. It seems not to have an understanding of the working day-to-day of artists at the sector and what is really happening on the ground and how things work. I find the theme, building cultural confidence, not to be the right target as an overarching theme. There is no problem in terms of cultural confidence, in terms of practitioners and the people. The problem is with the cultural system and the enabling environment. And that should be the target. If we nail an enabling environment, a proper international best practice enabling environment for the creative industries and the cultural sector, cultural confidence, amongst all kinds of other things, increased forex, etc., would be the result. But to head towards cultural confidence as the target could get into kind of fascist kind of territories and very simple-minded, two-dimensional kind of things like patriotism days and kind of stupidness like that. You know, we need to, if we nail the system whereby creatives work and cultural people are able to do their work, we would be able to facilitate the confidence of our people. I want to support what was said before in terms of the 50% local content call, as well as the call for a craft village or craft space for the crafts people. As regards the local content quota that has been brought up, I find it a little kind of worrying that it's gone straight to the minister and not to the stakeholders for consultation after a lot of work has been done on the ground to create that stuff. I think before it arrives to us as a done deal in Parliament, it should go to the stakeholders for us to see what's inside of there. A cultural policy is supposed to articulate the protocols that exist between the existing institutions and stakeholders of the sector and their roles and functions and their boundaries. That's like the culture division, the NCC, the museums, all these spaces, the statutory bodies, all those things. So the policy is supposed to define what exists and what the protocols are and how they act amongst one another. And a lot of resistance in the past to our cultural policies because certain of people on the ministry end don't want their roles corralled by policy statements that says, well, you only can go thus far and no further, and this is your role and function, and stick within your lane, and whatever. And if we proceed with a policy document that ignores the very institutions that constitute the landscape is a dangerous, we're going down dangerous territory. The cultural policy should accurately describe the landscape and the contemporary landscape and the historical landscape. This document doesn't do any of that. There's no historical context of who, what, why, when we are. It doesn't state the fact that we are in the midst of a major crisis in terms of the creative things, where the collapse of traditions, collapse of things all across the board, the death of an entire golden age generation, 20,000 VIP elders gone, all kinds of things. We are in the midst of a serious crisis after a golden age, and nothing about that context. So how can we prescribe for a context that is not described accurately? The policy document does not describe the international landscape for which this policy and which the current local landscape exists in. International landscape where within the last 18 years, creative industries became the second largest industry on planet Earth, now $7 trillion annually, according to some statistics, growing at a growth rate of 5% a year, bigger than manufacturing, bigger than extractive industries, bigger than all kinds of things. They have video game companies bigger than oil and gas companies. That is the reality of planet Earth. In that period where most countries in the world were going through creative renaissance, we were going through collapse. Why? Because of the lack of the enabling environment. So nothing about that context, nothing about the regional context. And there are studies, comparative studies that have been done by international agencies between us, DOMREP, Jamaica, other small island states. There's a lot of data that is available that has broken down where we stand, what has happened in the last 25 years, and those kinds of things. For the policy document to operate correctly, it should refer to all those things and situate us in place, again, internationally, regionally, and describe the landscape locally. Nothing about the government adopting the creative sector as one of the diversification leaders of the 7 diversification areas in the last X amount of years. The various engines that were created and the institutions that were created, TTN, TTFilm, all the other kinds of things, all the other policy things that were placed, and the success and failures of those interventions, which would give us an accurate read of where we are right now in terms of targets that were set, those kinds of things, the diversification agenda, all those things, where we are in a lot of those things. Nothing about the artist registry, which I think should be an important thing as a central thing of the thing, and especially as it relates to the 150% tax regime and those kinds of things. Nothing about that and its position and those kinds of things. Again, a cultural policy is supposed to identify all the pillars and all the different things that exist and it describes the landscape. That landscape also includes the major pieces of legislation that exist, identifying what they are and being rigorous in terms of how successful have they been. I know there's a SWOT analysis that does mention some of them, but it needs to be it needs to tunnel down a little more, and probably in those, I find the format is, I find it very off-putting in terms of breaking things down into those 3 sections, and this is something that we've engaged now for 3 decades, and I find for 2 days to sign off on a framework and stuff that we just arrived at us, in 2 hours, I find that a little kind of crazy.
Okay, great.
I just
wanted to wrap your last
yeah. So last thing, that agency that has been created, to be a grant agency and all, I can't remember the name of it, some kind of long name, is another name for an arts council, right? So why not call it an arts council? Because we got a cabinet note, we fought and got a cabinet note, and there's a cabinet note, so that means it's ministry policy, that a cabinet note, that an arts council, we fought for that in 2014, it's there. I would suggest that possibly the reason why it's not called an arts council, because one of the edicts of an arts council is that an arts council must be an arm's length agency, meaning it must be independent of the Politburo. And when we spoke to the British Council and the Canadian councils who said that they would help us set it up, they are clear that it has to be arm's length. You can't call it an arts council, which I would suggest is probably why it's now called that whatever long name, so that it could be micromanaged and kept under the purview. But the reason why all the successful creative industries work in the planet Earth is because they have arts councils which are arm's length from government. Government gives them their funding and then steps away. It deals with their accounts at the end of the year and all that, but they need to be away from it. And that's what is international best practice. And we will get the best practitioners in the world. They said they will come down and help us set it up, right? And as regards the panel of experts, Artists Coalition, we got the panel of experts. It was something that we created as a fail-safe in the 2010 budget. It's like if government does not implement what was supposed to be done, in the 2011 budget, we'll invoke a panel of experts to intervene. And so said, so done. It was set up like there were 8 stakeholders from the industry and 8 chosen by government. A master plan was created from that, which could have helped inform that. Pat Bishop died for that document. But the document that was submitted in our name to the ministry was not the one that we approved.
Okay. Well, Rubadiri, you have a history with this particular policy work that not a lot of us may
We created
be
a draft in 2008.
With, right? So I think and what is different about this particular consultation or conversation process is that it does not limit us to one day in Trinidad, one day in Tobago, but there are thematic sessions which you should attend. And you should make those contributions, but really narrow those contributions down into not just contributions, but specifics and how that could transform this document as we move forward.
We would submit language that we think and research and think that we think that is valuable, that could inform the document, because we can't go forward, not at this stage where we are competing against multi-billion-dollar industries and those kinds of things, and national industries who know their stuff, and we can't go forward with something that is shallow and that cannot support the weight of what's going on out there and the weight of who we are and where we are right now.
Okay, good. And so what we will do is engage you after this session for some more discussion, and of course you can present even further at those thematic sessions.
Can I get his name and the organization?
Yes, definitely. You all should be able to chat after. I want to go. Yes, because sorry, I missed your hand earlier. I saw it.
Oh,
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Please give your name and organization.
All right,
please.
so good afternoon. All protocols observed. My name is Iana Kelly Simmons, and as an educator and director of the nonprofit organization Arts by Creative Design, I'm very pleased to be here and to be given this opportunity to share some of our ideas. It's kind of interesting for us because as a group, we have engaged in a similar process for the past 2 years. And we're just at this point of being present at such a forum. So that when it came, I didn't register before, but I said I had to be here. You know? Now, Art by Creative Design, who are we? We are an incorporated non-profit organization that advocates for the promotion of excellence in arts education, training, and practice, and the appreciation of the arts in Trinidad and Tobago. Creativity is the answer. And for those of you who would have followed the 2018 World Cup series, you would be familiar with this ad campaign by the multinational corporation Adidas. And in this campaign, what they sought to do is to recognize that the 21st century calls for the development of a human capital that is able to harness the creative intellect of its people, systematically develop it, and use it to implement innovative solutions to the challenges we face today and may face in the future. ABCD, we believe a systematic approach to arts education would be key to addressing many of the issues raised and meeting all of the goals outlined in this draft policy. Arts education must be considered as one of the pathways towards cultural confidence if we are about capacity building. ABCD appreciates very much the stress on the need to engender a healthy cultural ecosystem. And I think that's what we're talking about, one that is healthy and connected. With this in mind, we advocate that a creative hub be established, and as a South-based group, we would like to see this creative hub established here in San Fernando to complement the cultural hub initiative that is currently being implemented in Port of Spain. As centers for learning and innovation in both formal and informal spaces, creative hubs have realized numerous benefits for the societies that have adopted this model, amongst it, which has been the fostering of opportunities for networking and community building. And in listening to the contributions of the question posed by Ms. Curtin and Ms. Francis, I think such a space, because that's what we're asking for a space. And such a space be established, some of these issues that have been raised here today could be addressed. Key to the success of this is the establishment of a space within which the advantages of arts education could be systematically drawn upon and honed to foster individuals who would be best positioned to take advantage of the plethora of opportunities open to creatives in the developing orange economy globally. The implementation plan identifies that harmonizing of the cultural sector will be achieved, and to quote, by ensuring that the needs of artists at the embryonic, emerging, and established development stages are addressed. And we ask the question, what better stage is there that represents the embryonic stage of the creative than that of a child? And I do note on page 8 of the draft document that you have mentioned students and schools. The implementation, though, therefore, should include, and this is where we need to stress, should include a clear strategy for recognizing and including our Trimbegonian children as part of our definition of creatives. Because you see, when we talk about creatives and people, we tend to forget that it starts from our children, the 6-year-old who we recognize within our communities, who can really sing, who can really dance, and who we foster while they're in primary school. But then when they get to standard 4 now, and in some cases standard 3, we tell them, here this now, you have to ease up on that, And then when they go into the secondary, so between 11 and 16, their exploits into their passions is relegated to 2 hours after school, twice a week, if they're lucky. And then suddenly, when they leave, we create a new space for the child who ain't really make it, who ain't really get the 5 subjects. And we're okay to throw them in now to a full program of the vapor. And we are saying that it is time that we create a space where these creatives can be fully developed and fully encouraged and be taught the same tools of the trade that you want to teach them in university. Teach them from young. Because in our modern society, the people who they look up to is their age. It's 18-year-olds who they are looking at. We're talking about what we've seen on TV. Well, okay. So we have to start from younger. So embryonic, we want to stress, and I see, yes, it was recognized, but we have to really capture it, that embryonic means from day 1. It is on this point that Art by Creative Design has spent most of its energies, as we believe that it is time for the establishment of an academy for the visual and performing arts. Right? Visual arts. And we have created a proposal. Our proposal is based on the charter school model. Right? This will be an institution geared specifically towards meeting the needs of our creatives in their embryonic stage, which would impact significantly on engendering the cultural confidence that is desired. And thank you for your time, and I hope that we at ABCD look forward to an opportunity to engage further.
Sure. I want to come back to that after we go through some more questions. I just want to just get a clear indication of how the order of questions going. Felix.
Hello.
Right. Oh, this lady. This lady. Right. Okay, good. So when we'll deal with this side after 1, 2, 3, but let's make it easy. Could you just place the microphone and line up behind the microphone? That'll make it easy, all right? Please. Yeah. Some of the hands we missed, unfortunately, sorry. Let's just do these questions here and then just line up behind the mic so we can get them. Go, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Felix Edinburgh, representing my organization. I have no special name. I am the only member. Now, what I'm saying is some of it has been said already, so I wouldn't want to repeat, but more to reinforce that I think that much more needs to be done with the education of children. I don't know if it has to be this policy or an education policy, but educating them on this, what we want to do, because regardless of, we're trying to present an excellent product, but if nobody appreciates the product, it will be a waste of time. And I'm telling you this from experience, that I have gone to schools, and last speaker spoke about 6-year-old. I've gone to what they call the preschool, which is about 3 years. And what I've done there, I was surprised at the kind of interest the children had. They never saw anything like this before. That is part of our culture. I've gone to that. I've gone to primary schools. I've gone to secondary schools, and they all appreciate what I am doing because many of them is the first time they've seen it. And that is part of our culture. Now, what I'm saying is that if we give it to them and they get a good taste of it, they will appreciate it. And you know what is the result? Schools keep calling me back, you know. It's just that I am just one person. But they keep calling me back. So I've spent, and not only around Carnival time, all during the year, because the children are interested in this. So we need to give the children a taste of the culture for them to appreciate and have a sense of confidence. As regards what Bass spoke about, this 50%, I will tell him something about this. It sounds good, but we have to prepare people for this, because I don't know if you remember, some years ago, about 15 years ago, Lord Superior started a station with local content. He wanted to have only local content. And after a short while, he had to give up because you're not getting advertisers. Nobody listening to the radio. And why? They weren't prepared for this. But when you take those same local content and you go to children in the schools, they appreciate it. So what I'm saying is that we have to prepare people for the product, okay? So, because I just want to end with this slogan. Regardless of how good you make the callaloo, I am telling you, the children will live and die eating Kentucky Fried.
Yes, please. And there's this lady here. Just try to keep your questions, and if we have more questions as well, just kind of keep it as concise as possible, please.
Good afternoon. All protocol observed. My name is Shans Davis. I am from Trenostra Multimedia. I'd like to start by saying that I believe it was George Gerbner who spoke about the gratification model, and basically that would speak to the amount of appreciation people would have for a product. Remember, we're speaking about the culture industry, and any industry is a business, right? So we want to go back to like even when Adorno and Horkheimer might have started writing about the culture industry and coined the term the culture industry. They showed you how it was an array of different businesses coming together and they use the culture industry to advertise the businesses. So that is what they thrived on. And we are very close to that now because we are seeing that it's a wide range of businesses powering the culture industry. So I believe that the culture industry could also work with the entertainment, tourism, and sports industries, not together, but they need to integrate to produce products that would give our consumers the gratification that they need. Because when you start speaking about the 50% regulation on airwaves and stuff, you need to remember that these private entities are businesses and they want to make a return on their investment. So it is us as the content producers who need to start producing stuff at a high quality up to the time that these young people are dealing with, that they would want to consume our products. If we appeal for 50% legislation on the airwaves, they still have cell phones, they still have tablets, they still have a wide range of other communications devices that they would use, and they would seek what they want to get gratification from. So we need to look at the production process, which is the actual production and the post-production process, right? We need to ensure that it is high-level quality that we are putting out and we are packaging. Also looking at marketing, I've heard some horror stories about carnival. It is a very beautiful thing, but if we cannot package it properly, it will not sell. And we need to have more visibility in international arenas. So I'll try to wrap this up very quickly, right?
No problem. Thank you.
It was Miss Knight, Dr. Knight.
Dr. Knight, yes.
Yes, who spoke about, well, my notes fell. She spoke about something to deal with heritage, and I wanted to know what format and what type of quality, because mind you, video production is actually one of the highest consumed forms of media right now. And if we are speaking about culture, we need to speak about media also, because it is media that is disseminating the culture, unless you actually go out to a best village or an event. But remember, with globalization and these different things, we have a wide diaspora across the world. We have people looking on for carnival from Brooklyn, Miami, you name it, there's a trini in every crack and crevice. So we need to be producing things at high quality that we could entice these people. So our culture is very rich. We have a very rich human resource at our disposal. So stuff like making documentaries about the late Honorable Patrick Manning and the late Dr. Eric Williams. These are things that would build cultural confidence and build our patriotism, help us to know our identity. But again, if we don't produce it at a certain quality, then the children will not want to look at it. You'll be frustrating them more than educating them.
Right.
So my company does video production, audiovisual production at very high quality. You could check us out if you want a card or something.
Of course, you know, in a consultation, you cannot have a consultation without a public service announcement, right? Or an ad. Thank you very much. Right, it came late, I was expecting it much earlier.
Good afternoon.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Name and organization, please just stand for the cameras.
I am Catherine Romain, Executive Director of the National Library and Information System Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
I'm
Yes,
here
thank you.
along with a senior group,
Yes.
and we believe cultural confidence, we think, begins at the ground level. We believe, though, that it can be propelled by our ability to document that which we speak about, that which we do, so that it's available for future access as well as sustainability. I heard someone speak about organizations that exist in culture and other people don't know about it. We want to say that libraries have existed in Trinidad for 167 years, actually, and that the NALIS Act has given the National Library the authority, the mandate to provide a service which is to facilitate cultural, economic, educational, political, and social development of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We have the responsibility and the authority to preserve and promote and exploit our national heritage. we also have the responsibility to maintain, develop, and make accessible a comprehensive collection of material and information with particular emphasis on that which is produced in Trinidad and Tobago by Trinidadians and the Caribbean, but by Trinidad and Tobago. We want to say that as a national library, our network is vast. We have influence in, well, our sphere of influence expands to government ministries, to government agencies, to every secondary school, to every primary school, to communities, even to inmates in the correctional institutes. We feel that we have a very important role to play within the national policy and culture and the arts. We believe that we can record, document for Trinidad and Tobago that which we have been, that which we are now, that which we will become. We can do it in the print form, but we can also do it in the digitized form. Whatever it takes to make sure that the culture of Trinidad and Tobago remains alive, not just for now, and not just for Trinidadians, but for the entire world. So we want to be an integral part of this process.
Thank you very much, Alice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, I know I have here, and then, okay. Right, and this gentleman, yes, I have to do you. I keep missing him.
Okay,
Please.
Dean Allen, artist.
Question or comment?
I have, okay, I'll make two comments.
Keep it nice and tight first, thanks.
Dean Allen, I'll be speaking as an artist, and I'll be
Yes.
speaking on behalf of data and projects.
Mhm.
We have been working on proposing designs for open spaces. And on that context, we have interacted with ministers, the state, corporate sector, community. So in our understanding and in my understanding, art and design has a very misunderstanding within the landscape, within the whole bureaucracy. So reading through the document, education is all over there, but education is vague. The visual artist needs to shift from the prescribed colonial understanding of what art is into a more urban planning understanding of an ancestral kind of thing. If we take on the indigenous, if we take on the fact that our ancestry as Africans and Indians come in here, and in Middle Easterns, and art has a functional role within the living space.
Okay.
Now, when we take that into consideration, we need to understand that education needs to be broadened and broken down into several layers. I will suggest that NIHS has, in their preamble, and we presented that, I dropped that onto the floor in the last consultation. NIHS said to drive innovation. Innovation should start from preschool up. Culture has always been vague about what type of education we need to move our sector forward. And that means we need to look at philosophy, we need to look at ethics, we need to look at history, and we need to look at an open curriculum. That means that we need to be very we have to stand up. We have to have the confidence to say to the state and to the people in our community what type of education this is. It's also understood that other groups in their preamble have also highlighted education. Maybe we should also look at what other groups have, I think agriculture, well, NIHS, and then so we have also found that, and that will take into consideration what you're talking about is e-tech, what is EVAX? Welding education, was that TechVox, right? TechVox education, which is now being pushed out and we're going to MIC. We have to look at all those things, and we'll have to look at how we need to put it back into the education system and how we push it back, way back down, even down into primary school. So we need to be very, I think it's not even there. in the policy, and that needs to change. One other thing with the PSEP thing, that PSEP thing, I can show you how it fails in the sense of the artist. I know I'm a member of the artist registry, I'm registered, but we could also point to the mural at the waterfront, how that mural was chosen. That was chosen because the artist registry was supposed to operate that you go on the registry, they look, they find sculptors, artists, muralists, whatever, and you can choose from those things. You could ask them to send it. That didn't happen. Obviously, we knew who was chosen, and we know the product that was given. So we saw the failure of the artist registry. And I think things fail because we don't particularly identify how it should operate. We need to break it down to nuts, bolts, screws, split everything down and break it down so it can work, and then find thing. So, yep, that's basically, I just would like to reiterate, yeah, education being a very important aspect and should be, hardcore specific on what that education is. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Reed. There's just this, you have the mic? Do you have the mic, sir? Yeah, I recognize him from before, so. Okay, Kevin.
Okay.
Question or comment?
Couple comments, few comments and a question.
Sure.
All right, good evening, everyone.
One comment and a question.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick. I understand time is short. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm representing a company called For the Record Limited and Airside Music, two different entities. I can tell you about that later. Ask me. Just a few things really quickly. Mr. Baz, 50%. Yeah, that sounds great. We're going to have issues with that, and that's something I think we definitely need to, when we talk about 50% on the airwaves, yeah?
Yes.
All right, cool. It's a great idea. There are things that need to be done as far as that is concerned, and I'd love to have a conversation with whoever is in charge where that is concerned.
I will
all
have
right?
Dr. Niles engage you after.
Okay, awesome. And Mr. Niles? Dr. Knights?
There's Dr. Donna Knights.
No, sorry, not
and
Dr.
Dr.
Knights.
Karen Niles.
So is it Dr. Niles?
Knights and Niles.
Niles, the young man. Okay, cool. Kudos on that. Well done. I don't think everyone understands how important what you're doing right now is in terms of being able to monitor and identify what's happening on the airways as far as music play is concerned. All right. Also, applause to the community development for what they're doing with the artisans. And the craft markets. I've actually been able to, For the Record, has actually been involved in some of these markets, and that's actually very good. There's a shortfall there that I think we need to address, and I don't see it properly addressed in the policy. Thus far, I know there's work being done. Number one, there needs to be a place where it can be seen very regularly. And as was pointed out earlier, when I travel, I see it in Barbados, Antigua, Grenada, all these places where they understand why it's important to have not just artisans, but also artists at the forefront of your community. We have people who are coming into the ports on a regular basis, whether it be cruise ships during that period, or whether it be the regular visitors. They must see the face of our culture. If we want to be proud of our culture, we must display it. For that to be displayed, we must foster the growth of that culture from the people who are doing it on the grassroots. Some of these people are doing it as a result of not having another choice. Some people are doing it out of national pride, but that must be fostered. So that brings me on to one of my major points, education. Not just education, and I agree with what was said earlier. Young people get to a certain age, we dismiss them from their possible future in the arts. We get very academic on them, and their ability to go in that direction fails. Places like the US, they foster it from a very early age, so the academies need to be in place to foster proper education as far as the arts is concerned. Not only that, but for those artisans and artists who are currently trying to make a life out of it, we need to support them. I've met with a few crafters, for example, who my wife and myself, we're trying to actually help them get their social media pages up just to be able to be seen somewhere. How can we expose our national culture? How can we show it off if it can't be seen in the places where people are looking now? And that's out of the normal communication levels into places like social media. I don't need to tell you all about this. Everybody knows about Facebook, Instagram, and all these things. And
Right.
then you can't just be seen locally. You have to be seen on the international level. All right, okay, cool. I think everybody understands where I'm coming from, all right?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so on to the question really quickly. As far as precept is concerned,
Thought
I
that
heard
was
someone
the
talking up. Sorry?
Sorry, I thought that last statement was the question.
Those were the statements.
Yeah,
Just the question
sorry.
really quickly, right?
Quickly, please.
Accountability and transparency precept. I've read a bit about it now, and I'm trying to understand how exactly is that going to work in terms of accountability, not just when it's initiated, but this forum here, meeting people at the grassroots, that's important. These are the people that count. These are the people it will affect directly. These are the people who should be heard. So once this committee is in place, what's the follow-up? Is this going to continually happen? Can we ensure that we are continually heard and that the decisions that are made represents a proper cross-section of all of those who are represented here, not just a few from a committee that's selected, but at some point later, the follow-up has to be made to identify, okay, this is working or this isn't working, the representation is actually there, and the people are being properly heard. Okay? There's a lot more to be said, but I know time is of the essence, so I'll leave that for now.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you. I want to go to the gentleman, so let's just get a little bit of order here. We have the gentleman in the brown sweater. Yes. No. The gentleman in the brown sweater. I've ignored him way too long. I kept skipping over him because of where he was sitting. So this gentleman, I want to go to national drama. Yes, I need to get a response from here, and then we'll start going back and forth. Yes, please. Again, keep it concise. If there's a major comment, give me the major comment. If there's a major question, give me the major question. Yeah? Keep it nice and tight. Go.
Testing. Yeah. All protocol being observed.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, my name is Kerwin Calendar.
Give me your first name again, please.
Kerwin, Kerwin Calendar.
Right.
A member of one of the directors of the American Heritage Foundation. Americans.
Americans, yes.
Americans, yes.
Yes. Welcome, Americans.
Okay. And like my colleague, my former fire colleague, Bass, music also, I'm also a tutor at the Best Village Music. I have similar areas, but he touched that already, so I wouldn't touch that. Okay. However, I believe that the Americans, we have had a model developed. Now, I want to make mention of one thing. A gentleman on this side, somebody there, he mentioned the best practice. But I want an international best practice or something like that. But I want us to understand that our international best practice is is very cautious. We must be cautious because the uniqueness of our indigenous, the indigenous aspect of our culture, wants us to ensure that we can almost not take much, particularly when we are dealing with maybe former colonial countries. We must ensure that and let me quickly, again, let me a bullet form, since we are pressed for time. When I say so, I mean, for instance, our program, the Americans, look at the history, I can't go into detail right now. However, the Americans, we are based in the company villages. And what we have done, we have been able to interact with NALIS and even the National Archives, and we have had several exhibitions. We believe our model is one that can even be adopted by the wider, we will challenge even the governmental agencies, where we, out of pocket money, we do it, and we were able to, even the company schools, some people spoke yesterday about the schools, what about the schools? They got nothing. We have been able to challenge and have essays done at the schools based on our history, our legacy, and it entails all the work we did in the agricultural sector, in the social sector, in the spiritual sector. As a matter of fact, the very Negro spirituals that we hear from way decades ago, they were all introduced by our foreparents. And again, too, press for time, these songs and this music, music that dealt with the very painfulness that came about as a result of you know what, on the plantations, etc., time essence. And we, again, too, so in having to interfere with that word, international, that statement, international best practice, Someone said, well, Canada or America. Yes, I do have regard. I have traveled to maybe about 15 or so countries. We've done research. Again, our team have gone and have done research throughout the Caribbean to ensure that we can touch base with in a synonymous way. Those are people like the Maroons, they are synonymous with us. So what we are saying is this: we must ensure that we can capture those children, and we have done it in recent years. We have had very successful essay competitions at the schools, and more so, we have had Mr. and Miss American competition at these company villages. And we have had several occasions. As a matter of fact, we have, even as of last year, we've done some work with the National Archives. NALIS, I heard someone, our director of NALIS. We had exhibition at NALIS. There's also a documentary out. But this documentary was speedily done, and we hope that we can do one that is of a more indigenously based, more indigenously authentic, for want of better words. We are working feverishly, and more so to kind of put things together in a way whereby our youths would not stray. Because also we're looking about agricultural aspect, the social aspect. And when I say agriculture, I think that the hill rice, or the Creole rice, is a rice that our foreparents brought here many years ago. And we have had celebrations. We have had, what do you call it, for the ladies, we have had food stalls, and it has been extremely rewarding. And we would like to know that gentleman of the steel band, what is his name?
Mr. Diaz.
He mentioned, Mr. Diaz, sorry to forget your name, so I should not forget your name. You mentioned about the museum. As a matter of fact, we have museums at our homes. I have a museum at my home. And some of our homes are not discommoded, but we have museums at our homes. And we are hoping that, when he mentioned that, I was hoping that probably there will be the need in a national sense to have a strategically located building with a multi-operational. So you would have year-round. You call it tourist, I think cultural tourism or something like that, you know.
Yes.
But we need to ensure that we have our model. I can assure you, the model that we have, that can be adopted in a major way to facilitate our national community. I don't want to go on and on and on and on.
Well, actually, what I want to do is,
time is first spent.
I think, and so you're raising some very important recommendations. And so Monday the 6th of August, right? Monday the 6th of August at 9:30 a.m. I think that time we need to change, but 9:30 a.m. San Fernando City Hall. That's where we'll be discussing the heritage, memory, and legacy component of the policy, right? So you'd have an opportunity there to present more details and with like-minded persons.
Just one more point.
Yeah.
Please, give me 1 second. It's gone already.
Second gone already.
Bass has said something there, Eugene Bass. That guy who took his guitar. I had a similar occurrence where a guy was being confused with a guitar. He took his guitar and did some extempo thing. He said, "What's that, my friend?" You know, those guys, they were excited. We have our bottled thing here, sir, and we can use it to our advantage. Mister, please.
Thank you, yes. So I'll see you on the 6th, right? On the 6th of August. I need to go here. I need to go here, yes? But go ahead. Yes, See, it's gone. On the heritage, the 6th of August, please. Yeah, 6th of August. Yes, National Drama Association.
Thank you, Marlon.
Yeah? Concise question statement.
Very concise, trust me.
You know, you all know how to edit a script, so.
Right, my name is Tristan Wallace, and I'm the Vice President of the National Drama Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Okonako. Right. Please excuse my coverings. I'm freezing, if you all might have seen that. So, as the National Drama Association of Trinidad and Tobago, we recognize that theater could be a unifier of different aspects of the arts, including literary arts, crafts, drama, dance, etc. Now, in terms of building cultural confidence, my understanding of that is having the capacity to appreciate and hold our own even in international settings. Now, we have a university under the government of Trinidad and Tobago that is not internationally accredited. So how would the practitioners or the graduates that come out of that university be able to hold their own in an international setting if they don't have the international accreditation? That is one question. The second question, still dealing with representing abroad, there are many times our practitioners go abroad to represent in different festivals or showcases, etc. And it is very difficult to get, one, the support, financial support, or even systematic support to go abroad to represent our culture in these international settings, as well as after representing, when they come back, there's like nothing heard about it at all. What sort of, one, support would the National Policy on Culture and the Arts be able to give them to go abroad, as well as give them a national platform when they return after, showing our culture abroad?
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, rapporteurs, you got those? Those are very clear questions. You all got those, right? Rapporteurs, you all got those. Thanks. Follow up from National Drama.
Follow up from
please.
National Drama Association,
Yes.
Stefani Amatali, Secretary. The NDAT understands that part of developing a product of high quality that will generate high revenues is to test the product. The NDAT is interested in testing and evolving the product via regional audiences. Our Tobago practitioners need to test their products here and us there. We would like to know what will be or can be done to assist in inter-island travel and regional travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. And regional travel is a big issue with the CARICOM heads of government meeting. That was a big issue on the agenda, how we could travel much easier and much cheaper in the region. Thank you for bringing that question. Back to the mics here.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Yes.
I guess I have to say who I am. My name
Yes,
is Victor
please.
Edwards. I used to be the president of the Secondary Schools Drama Association, chairman of the Caribbean Secondary Schools Drama Association. I'm a retired curriculum coordinator for the Visual and Performing Arts at the Ministry of Education, and I am now the artistic director of the Irie Theatre Productions. And we are proud to say that all of the work that we've been doing for the last 8 years, all that work has been steeped in the heritage, culture, and history of Trinidad and Tobago. So we, as myself as a person and my theater group that I'm now the artistic director of, we exhibit cultural confidence. And we've been doing so for a very, very long time. I want to take off on a point because I want to say that cultural confidence to me has to do with the way we see ourselves. And I want to go back to a point that Mr. Bass and Mr. Victor and Dr. Niles raised about legislation for having 50% local content on our areas. Now, I want to go back to the point to show you how we should be looking at ourselves. We should be arguing to limit foreign fare on our radio stations to 50%, and not arguing for 50% of our local content to be on the radio. It's the same thing, but we're looking at it from a different perspective. It's only when we begin to look at ourselves from that perspective, where we are the one holding all the trump cards, and we are the strong ones, then we would begin to develop the kind of confidence in ourselves and our culture. And we begin to tell our own stories, we begin to write our own songs, we begin to write our own poems and our own plays and so on, and we begin to have that level of appreciation of who we are. The second point I want to make is that we must also, I hope that the National Policy on Culture and the Arts will also pay attention to the milestones along the way. 1963, the Best Village. 1965, Secondary Schools Drama Association. 1972, the San Fernando Arts Council establishing the festival that they had. 1979, the National Drama Association Also in 1963, you had the beginning of the Panorama competition as well. And Mr. Diaz was here. And you see, we're talking about having the kind of impact in our nation. But where can I go if I, as a cultural practitioner, want to play pan in A minor as was done so many years ago? Where can I go and find that notation of that music that was done in that particular year to do that? For years, Zeno Constance and I and Louis Regis and so on have been talking about using calypsos as poetry. Let's approach Tuco, let them get the rights and so on, and we take the poem, the calypsos, and turn them into poems with a CD and a DVD so they can hear them as poems and calypsos as well. You know, these are things that we have to do if we want to develop that kind of cultural confidence within our society. We also have to recognize who exists. And I'm sorry that the mayor himself, I mean, Mayor Regrello and I, we go back a long way. But over the last couple of years, I have been arguing and discussing with Mayor Regrello to name a street in San Fernando after Black Stalin. Black Stalin's parents lived right behind the library. The mother used to sell oranges and so on there. And Black Stalin is a five-time Calypso monarch, you understand, apart from being international. And yet still, we cannot recognize our own while they're alive. Thank you. We have to begin to do those things so that the children will know that they're walking on Stalin's Avenue or Promenade or whatever. And that is how we begin to invest in ourselves, and we begin to become stronger and stronger believers in who we are. And you would see, unlike what somebody says, I'm sorry, was it Felix? I certainly believe, Felix, that if we do the right things, that, you see the Kentucky thing, that gone through the window. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I just want to wrap this section up, and I'm going to allow three quick statements or questions from the floor. That's three individual statements or questions from three individual persons, all right? I didn't see you at the mic, so. Yeah. Right, okay. That's it right there? Okay, good. Thank you. Right? One, who are they? One? Yeah, 2, 3. Okay, quickly. Some of those questions will have to come after. You will have to write them down, present them after. Let's go here, please. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I am Marlon Espinoza, and I am the chairman of the Native Caribbean Foundation. My organization does theater productions with children 6 to 16, and built into that is an entrepreneurship component. I have not heard the policy allude to or talk about any form of entrepreneurship within this sector. And if we are talking about cultural confidence, I am most confident when I am making money. And if I am not making money, sometimes, even no matter how much I love doing something, I can't afford to do it. So my area of expertise is making money from this sector. And when I say making money, it doesn't mean that I put a lot of money in the bank, but the money goes back into paying all the practitioners that work with me. My director, my musical director, my choreographer, my stage hands, my lighting, my sound people. All that is part of this sector that we are talking about here. And I am getting the impression that the ministry wants to create a policy that continues to subsidize particular areas that may not need subsidizing. Now, I am not saying that the ministry should not put money into the developmental areas of this sector, but there is sort of something in my mind that says we all need free money from the ministry. So I run my organization without any grant funding whatsoever, and without any funding from any private enterprise other than what they pay for advertising. We run productions that have a budget of $300,000, and it's all paid for by advertising and ticket sales. We sell 7,000 tickets to our annual productions, which takes place in Napa and Sapa every year. One of the difficulties we encounter is that there does not seem to be a clear policy as to how the ministry utilizes its performance spaces. So for instance, the minister met me personally at our first production and invited me to have my productions in Napa and Sapa. And I said to her, it's too expensive. I prefer Naprima Bowl. And she says, okay, based on what you are telling me about your organization, it being an NGO, it being a non-profit organization, and falling under the criteria of the ministry under which they give waivers, you will have a waiver from Napa and Sapa of 50% so that you can have your productions there. So I got 3 waivers for 3 productions in Napa and Sapa. And then this year they told me, no, we're not giving any more waivers. And I said, but what changed? Did the policy change? No, the policy didn't change. Well, what changed? Why are you denying me the waiver? And they said, well, we have a committee, and if the committee decides not to give you a waiver, you don't get the waiver, right? So what I'm saying is that either there is a policy that governs a waiver, or there is someone who says, yes, I can give it to you, yes or no, but it can't be both, right? So the ministry has to look at its policy, within this policy, of how they administer over their performance spaces. The other thing is that...
Could we limit it to 1?
Yeah.
So could we take the other thing and make a note of it and we will record it? Right, so you can speak with anyone. Yeah, I need to move on to some other
Great,
person.
thank you very much.
No problem. So Kimi will take that statement. Just take his question from him and we will refer to it later.
Good afternoon,
Thank
Colin
you.
James of the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs.
Sure.
Our observation is this. We do not see how the policy is linked with the broader government framework of promoting brand Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
1. 2, Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs is about promoting interests of Trinidad and Tobago abroad and the interests of Trinidad and Tobago nationals here. If we do not have a clear national identity, and if cultural practitioners choose not to acknowledge the fact that there is a Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs until they get into trouble overseas, we have wasted 3 hours of our Monday afternoon. So for all cultural practitioners, if you want to go overseas, please let the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs know so that we'll tell our overseas missions. So in the event that you are in distress, we can help you. That is what we're about. National policy, fine, but get all the other ministries involved, have a clear identity of who we are as Trinidad and Tobago citizens, and it will be a success. Otherwise, complete failure. Good evening all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So foreign affairs needs to be integrated into this process as we move forward. Quick question?
So, yes, question and comment.
Yes, thanks.
First things first, from the standpoint of youth development, how does the policy address the fact that outside of competition, there are no real incubators for youth to develop within the creative and cultural sectors and develop A, identity, and B, cultural competence? And 2, if we're looking at imparting culture, we have to reinforce the intellectual component of culture from a very early age, simply because every other thing is marketed as such. Dance hall does it, rap does it, and everything else does it. But we have to look at it from the standpoint of, as soon as we develop those speech patterns, we have to develop the ones that are germane to us and endemic to our culture if we want to ensure that that identity is developed within our youth. Thank you.
Sure. Just give me your name and organization, please, to the rapporteurs.
Yes.
Give me your name. Yeah, just pass it on to them. Thanks. Dave Williams, thanks.
Dave Williams. With Mr. Victor, context is important. And one of the things that the policy I may have disregarded is the understanding that the aesthetic valuing that art allows. And we have to be careful to avoid a welfare by art culture. The aesthetic valuing, we have our cities going into decay. We have a lot of decay going on around us. The thing about art is that exposure to art increases your senses, your taste, what you wear, how you see, how you perceive the world. It heightens, and you are able to make aesthetic decisions, better aesthetic decisions. So the world around us is aesthetically, it's crumbling. So how we look at that inherent understanding and exploration of art is significant. Additionally, the health of artists. A healthy artist is by nature a nurturer. So a healthy artist is naturally an educator. Programs in schools and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, we need them, but we need to have healthy, working, developing, thriving artists. When young people see healthy, thriving artists, they want to be those people as well.
Thank you very much, Dave. Well, that was the last statement I was taking from the floor, unfortunately. We have to wrap this evening up. But of some and you have opportunities to present more questions, more comments. We could take them. We have our officers on standby. You could just record them with Kimmy, with Jamie, and some of the rapporteurs as well. But I just want to bring to your attention the other sessions that will give you an opportunity to present your questions and really help with the transformation of this policy. So today we had the national consultation, national conversation in Trinidad. Next week, Tuesday, we'll be in Tobago doing a national conversation there, similar to this setup. If you happen to be in Tobago and you want to pop by, tell your colleagues, your counterparts in Tobago about it. We are partnering with the Division of Tourism, Culture and Transport to present that, and that's next week, Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. The visual and performing arts, inclusive of literature, film, fashion, etc., that session is on Monday, the 30th of July, and this will be at Napa Hotel Restaurant, right? Remember Napa, the restaurant, next side of the building? Right, so we'll be there, and that time is at 5 p.m. This session is intended to be a bit more round table, where you actually work in groups, dig deeper into the document, and make concrete recommendations on how you build out parts of that document. Am I correct, Dr. Knights? Right. So the next session, following session will be Monday, the 6th of August. This is Heritage, Legacy, and Memory. San Francisco City Hall, Harris Promenade. We have 9:30 to 11:30 for that, 9:30 a.m. But we'll take some feedback from the house in terms of the appropriate time for that. Yeah? We'll do that. You could just share with us what is the best time, and we will get in touch with you. But, sorry, is Monday, the 6th of August, that's scheduled for Heritage, Legacy, and Memory, San Fernando City Hall Auditorium, Harris Promenade. And then the last session, which is Cultural Industries. So all the major questions about making money, the gentleman was asking about that. You spoke about cultural industries, providing services for rolling out cultural products and ideas. That will be discussed even further in that session. That is Monday, the 13th of August, also scheduled for 5 p.m. at the Napa Hotel and Restaurant. Right? So we go to Tobago, come back to San Fernando. Am I correct? No, I lied. We go to Tobago, we go to Napa, come to San Fernando City Hall, and we end back in the Napa Hotel and Restaurant. The Vapa session is at 5 p.m., Napa Hotel and Restaurant. Sorry? City Hall, we'll have to discuss the time. It says 9:30 on the schedule, but looking at the mix we have here, we may need to look at adjusting that time, right? Yeah, but there are also some heritage persons that presented here. So we'll get some feedback. If it's okay with everybody, fine, but let's get some feedback about that time. So you get the best yeah? Okay. So thank you all for your contributions. I think you need to give yourselves a round of applause. Yes, please. What we get from this policy, I think what really pushes itself to the front in the idea of cultural confidence is how much it's inculcated from the early level, from childhood, within the education system, and not just formal education, but education in your families, through your communities and societies, and so on. So I think the kind of resounding idea is this policy has very much a cradle, yes? This policy has to have so much interconnectedness. Not led, yes, by the ministry responsible for culture, but interconnected with heritage, with education, national security, social, all these areas, foreign affairs, all these things, so that the Trinidad and Tobago citizen, that cultural citizen is confident and can go out there, and when you see them and say, oh, that's a Trinbagonian, right? Because they walk this way and they act this way and they operate in a particular manner. And this is how it manifests itself. as Tambo rightfully said, that you could get all the cultural manifestations, but how you behave culture and how it operates within your society and your communities will help it how that manifests itself in your artistic and creative expressions. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure guiding this conversation. You all made it work very, very easy, right? And I'm happy for that, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Marlon. Thank you for all the practitioners who contributed. Don't get up just yet. I know we're anxious to get home, but we do have Idris Salim, who's going to wrap up the conversation, wrap up some of your contributions in his final spoken word piece, and then I will give my vote of thanks, and then you could leave. So just give us 1 second while Idris gets on stage. Oh, there he is. And he is going to kind of give an overview of some of your comments. Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting session. And we look forward to further conversations with you. Idris?
All right. So I was given the very difficult task of creating while listening, soaking in stuff. I even had contributions of my own to make, but I had to do some writing here. It was really scrappy, so let's see what we got with this. These are your words, so anything that you don't agree with, it's a mirror, you know, so you check yourself, you know. As Damian Richardson said, or as said by Damian, the journey has been a winding one. Like the Lady Young, it wouldn't be the last. But today we presented the draft, and the policy when passed should be one that makes its mark. We're creating a pathway of confidence for our countrymen. Dr. Ram Logan did speak of a process of expert research and critique in creating this cultural policy that we seek. If you don't know where you're going, any road would take you there. And that we still share a colonial air. Indigenous culture is still treated unfair. Allocation is skewed, and so the cultural sector doesn't get its share. And so the ministry thought that advice should be sought so that you could have a listening ear. Every area should improve values, attitudes, and behavior, which takes us to the question, what is culture? In developing this cultural policy, there is much oddity in this odyssey. Come with me. It's a walk from being culturally impoverished, having heard nothing of it, to cultural sovereignty. Honestly, some will see in this a lesson in that culture could be seen as both ways of life and different cultural expressions. Then I reckon this would be the nuances, responses, and reflections an outsider would select once referring to what's intrinsically La Trinity, the past, contemporary to infinity. The minute we spin it, we see the symmetry between culture and our functional existence in TNT. Each one of these facets are best seen as ones of assets to hold value when assessed. And to create policy, the qualities must be seen interdependent as an ecology, an enriched cultural ecosystem. It must be interrelated, connected, not conflicted, but essential to our country's growth. From one seed sown, bearing fruit to make our identities known, to purport an industry to support where the macro and the little, the physical and the intangible can flourish, remain nourished, regain knowledge, so we can in time grow from individual niches and silos to a merging and converging of every power that I know. She spoke of the Cultural Collaboration Forum, the Carnival Institute, COSTAT, CNMG, Film TNT, Fashion TNT, the National Trust, YTEP, UTT, projecting a vision of cultural experts and practitioners. They will serve as the engine in the engine room to be drafted and implemented soon, not swept under the carpet with a broom. So they ask, If there was a question, then ask it. Whether it's about unity, whether it's grant opportunity. After they spoke of the vapor, the industry of the filmmaker and the actor, how could we edit the ways in which we can merit from the things we inherit? How can we practitioners reach their zenith, get the right credit through the strength that is systemic, monitoring and evaluation through measures both quantitative and metric? The floor was far from closed. The floor was open by Marlon for recommendations and questions posed to the man on the ground, the one who knows what cultural confidence means. It was Keith Diaz who stated the policy as something he strongly advocated. He recommended a simpler policy, for the simple brother man who could understand. Also, the museum that projects our culture could be grander in structure. Also, the government being the one to represent that would kind of prevent confidence. It was also recommended an immediate incident without increment that the local music be mandatory by way of 50%. Even the tertiary educators should put the indigenous musical creators on paper before our confidence goes up in vapor. Another spoken word piece about the poor cultural storage and mosquito on our foreheads. In speaking of spaces, there are performers in existence for years and nobody knows their faces. There was admonition about payment with different ratings. The craft industry appeals for special designating. All concerns that, if addressed, will have our confidence trailblazing. There was also a recommendation for zero weighting regarding monetary and monetizing and weighting. Another issue we see ourselves facing is the usage of rehearsal spaces. What about the position that we are adversely affected by cultural imposition? A local way of life should be our mission. It was the opinion that the policy resembled a cultural policy as opposed to a strategic plan and seems foreign rather than sovereign, and seems that there was no historical context. The enabling environment of TNT was lacking, and therefore it may not get any backing. It was about arts. What about arts and education? Creating cultural creative hubs. That complements cultural confidence. A creative could be identified from day one to harness creative creation. Mr. Felix, representing the group Felix, also spoke of the focus on the kids. No matter how good you make the callaloo, the children will live and die eating Kentucky Fried. It was noted that you must create a counterculture of similar quality for cultural confidence commencement, shortly followed by a public service announcement. How can we develop ourselves if our education and development aren't linked and synced? This affects how the primary youth thinks. It should be broken down to bolts and links. We heard so many things from the rep of the Americans, but what about our accrediting? When we fly out and fly back in as ambassadors, we don't get anything. That is how we strengthen our lives, recognizing Calypsonians while they are alive. Also, we can't feel pride as a native body if we're not making any money. I must personally say that we are surely confident due to our inability to make short comments. What we also are sure of is that we cannot effect change by sitting in our corners. We must shape the future by assessing our present and our formers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, very, very much. Now you see why you couldn't get up and leave right away. So thank you very much for coming today. I want to thank all the participants, all the persons who contributed to ask questions, criticized, pulled apart. Everything that you said today was valuable, and we take it back to the table for future discussions, future conversations in the upcoming weeks. I want to thank the staff of NAPA, the Culture Division, the Policy Unit, the staff of my own department who are here. We have had this session streamed live, and we've had some very interesting questions and comments. So congratulations and thanks to the backstage staff. The team worked on the draft policy framework. We have made some strides, but we have further to go. And today's session has opened our eyes to some of the areas that we have to dig deeper into and add to the policy. I want to thank DRECHI, the Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired. They have contributed significantly to ensure that all were included. And I want to thank you again for being here, members of the media, those who contributed online. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to wish you a safe journey home, and I look forward to seeing you in the coming weeks in our individual thematic sessions. And for those who could make it to Tobago, I hope to see you in Tobago. Have a wonderful evening, ladies and gentlemen. You can pass it to the young lady who's waving. Jamie, wave again.